Good afternoon. Welcome to the programme. Welcome to the Home of Common Sense.
Yes, it's me again, your genial host, Kevin O'Sullivan. Top of the morning to you. This is Talk Breakfast. I'm Mark Dolan.
Just some breaking news for you coming out of Liverpool Crown Court.
Loads to talk about, I promise you that. Loads and loads and loads.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the programme. Welcome to the Home of Common Sense.
Yes, it's me again, your genial host, Kevin O'Sullivan. Top of the morning to you. This is Talk Breakfast. I'm Mark Dolan.
Just some breaking news for you coming out of Liverpool Crown Court.
Loads to talk about, I promise you that. Loads and loads and loads.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the programme. Welcome to the Home of Common Sense.
Yes, it's me again, your genial host, Kevin O'Sullivan. Top of the morning to you. This is Talk Breakfast. I'm Mark Dolan.
Just some breaking news for you coming out of Liverpool Crown Court.
Loads to talk about, I promise you that. Loads and loads and loads.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the programme. Welcome to the Home of Common Sense.
Yes, it's me again, your genial host, Kevin O'Sullivan. Top of the morning to you. This is Talk Breakfast. I'm Mark Dolan.
Just some breaking news for you.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
And good morning. Yes, welcome to the Home of Common Sense. Ian Collins in the seat for Jeremy Kyle for today and for next week. 3 minutes after 6 o'clock. Man alive. So much together. We reached the end of a busy news week, and this time yesterday, no one thought that Peter Mandelson would be the lead story. The Prince of Darkness is back in the headlines. Turns out they knew all along that this man was not fit for purpose, but they persisted anyway. This is a mess, and the Prime Minister is up to his neck in it.
There was then, I should add, security vetting carried out independently by the security services, which is an intensive exercise that gave him clearance for the role, and you have to go through that before you take up the post.
But it didn't give him clearance for the role. He failed. He failed the security vetting. Seriously, can Keir Starmer survive this? It is inconceivable to most that he did not know. It's either that or this is a man running a government where his most senior advisors decided not to tell him. In what world do you not inform the Prime Minister? In what world do you not let the top man realise that a senior figure had failed security checks for a job of this level and this seniority? If the Prime Minister doesn't have the confidence of his own team, then surely his number is up. Should he just resign now? Is that it? 0344 499 1000. Elsewhere, still no information from Surrey Police on the identity of the alleged rape gang in Epsom. When a story gathers this much momentum and locals are gathering in the streets to ask for answers, you might think the police chief would make some sort of statement. There is a haunting silence coming from Epsom today. And is the Pope becoming too political as his row with Donald Trump intensifies? Pope Leo has criticised leaders who spend billions on war and said the world was being ravaged by a handful of tyrants. Who is he referring to? And should the Pope butt out of world affairs? Or some might take the view it's literally his job to give his views on the current state of planet Earth. All of this, all the breaking news, and boy, there's going to be some breaking news throughout the course of this show. 0344 499 1000 is where you will find us. In the studio, James Price, former senior government advisor, is with us. James, morning to you.
It's great to be with you, my friend.
It is great. It's great for many reasons, of course. I said it at the beginning. You know, I love the news cycle. You can't always work out the news cycle. You know, people often message in and say, well, why are you not talking about this subject? Or why does that one rise to the top and other ones that seem significant don't get the same kind of airing? It's not a conspiracy. It's just a curious, organic way that news sort of develops. But what we didn't know this time yesterday was that Mandelson would be back on every single front page. I mean, it's there. Starmer accused of misleading Parliament over Mandelson. That's going to be the central allegation here.
Absolutely right.
He literally failed the security checks.
Right, and you might have to remind me over the course of the next hour to wipe the slightly smug grin off my face on this, because it is really serious and it is really important. And at the end of the day, this is all about Mandelson's why did he fail? We'll come on to that. But broadly, the fact that he was best friends, in their own words, with a notorious billionaire paedophile in the form of Jeffrey Epstein, of whom there are plenty of victims and all the rest of it. The reason that I have a slightly smug smile on my face is that this is coming back to bite Labour yet again, coming back to bite Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, yet again, because we had so many years of Starmer and the rest of his Labour goons being so smug and so sanctimonious. We are good people, not like you evil right-wingers, and when we come in, everything's going to be wonderful and marvellous, and suddenly it turns out they are wrong. They are just as hypocritical as everybody else, and they're breaking all the rules and the conventions designed to keep us all safe in order to do what? To make the country a better place? Nope. No, that's right. To let this guy who's twice had to be sacked in horrible scandals in the past get away with the fact that he failed very high-level security tests and has embarrassed us on the world stage with the United States and everybody else. And who knows, therefore, what else they've done.
I mean, this is... I consider this... I mean, scandals come and go, wallpaper, glasses and suits for Starmer. I mean, to me, that's where the rot set in. The reason the glasses and the suits... from Lord Ali were significant was specifically because of what you just said when they came in. I mean, they were running around the place essentially saying, we don't even know millionaires. We don't know these kind of people that will give you a free this and a free that. Right. That's not us. We're the people's representatives. we don't party with that lot. And it turns out that Rayner's been to New York. They all went off to France, where I think he's got a place out there for a pool party. I mean, they were lording it up over there at Socialist HQ forever. And of course, they got the suits and the glasses. I don't know how many times one cabinet can go and see Taylor Swift, frankly. I mean, they all seem to go about 18 times. They from early days, the rot sort of set in. But this, however, I mean, I would argue this is kind of as big as it gets for so many different reasons. Yeah,
I think that's right. I mean, there are some elements of it which are complicated, which I know we'll get into in terms of timelines and what Starmer said, what Starmer knew, all those sorts of bits that we should get into, because I think it's interesting in its own right and it speaks to the wider lack of grip that these guys have got. But I think it is really important because whereas something like Partygate, which is not to forgive any of that, did Boris Johnson have a bit of cake here and there and the rest of it? It was sort of fundamentally over slightly important, not trivial things, but whilst the rest of the country was locked down and all the rest of it. This is about something, as you say, about as serious as it gets. So let's put this out. So Peter Mandelson, who we know was sacked twice over very serious things in the past, had the rules all bent and broken for him by a mixture of political appointments in the form maybe of Morgan McSweeney, maybe the Prime Minister knew, he says he didn't right now, and certainly we now know the top civil servant in the Foreign Office, Sir Ollie Robbins, who last night dramatically was forced to quit. Was fired essentially by the Prime Minister. And they've had him. He failed this security vetting, which we should talk about, because I started going through that same developed vetting when Liz Truss was Prime Minister, and didn't have long enough of Liz Truss being Prime Minister for me to complete that process. It's really rather invasive, right? And they ask a lot of things. They know about all those sorts of videos that you might watch when you're in alone at night, maybe. They know, they ask you to list all the ex-partners you've ever had. They ask you to list all, at this level, all the foreigners you know, for example, because it's that level of importance. Yes. And when you're the American ambassador, and you're in charge of that most important of all relationships, there's not just the trade and the economics and all the rest of it, it's the intelligence stuff. It's what joint intelligence operations are you on? Would Peter Mandelson have been read into that? And if he therefore failed the test of these things, and we don't yet know why that is, he was still allowed to go and do it. This is a national security breach, isn't it? On top of the fact we've also discovered that he was potentially giving his mate Epstein sensitive commercial information about European bailouts and things like that. This is not just a scandal of kind of Westminster tittle-tattle, therefore. This is about as serious as it gets about matters of national security and propriety and trade secrets and all the rest of it.
What's interesting is and this may well turn out to be decisive in what happens next. What he said in the Commons, as distinct from what he said outside of the Commons, because they're two very different areas in terms of how they could be challenged. Let's have a listen to Starmer, because he said due process was followed. Due process was followed, which is very different from saying he passed security. This is him speaking in September in the House of Commons.
Speaker, as she and the House would expect, full due process was followed during this appointment, as it is with all ambassadors. The ambassador has repeatedly expressed his deep regret. He is right to do so. He's now playing an important part in the US-UK relationship.
Now, this is interesting. I was listening to Emily Thornberry. She's the chair of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, and they had the head honchos, the mandarins from the Foreign Office in there, and sat there for God knows how long, because those things do bang on a bit, don't they? And she and her team, her committee, had asked all of these questions. And, of course, what they didn't ask, because they didn't think you would have to ask it, is did he pass?
Right.
So they spent all that time saying to him, was due process followed? And all these mandarins, we followed all the due process. Everything that anyone else would be asked, we asked Peter Mandelson. But no one in that. So the committee of people, at least one of them that were being asked questions by that committee, probably knew that that Mandelson had failed. But they weren't going to advance this information. So Starmer says, due process, there he is in the Commons. Was he being careful in saying due process was followed? Because due process might well have been followed. That's different to failing what happens when due process is followed. So he's covered himself. He hasn't lied to the House of Commons as a Prime Minister. That's the point. That's a big crime politically, of course. Which brings us to the question of whether he did know. Did Starmer know?
Right, so
because to me, it's your first go at this one is it's inconceivable that a Prime Minister would not know somebody that he was about to appoint an ambassador to the United States had failed security.
If any Prime Minister was going to be that clueless, though, it's the guy we've got at the moment, isn't
true.
it? I think you're exactly right on this stuff. Was Starmer and were the rest of them using this as a kind of term of art, where technically they can say yes, we followed the process. Without necessarily saying if you failed or passed or not. We always like to accuse the left and the civil service more broadly of caring more about process than outcome, but this is obviously taking that to a ridiculous degree.
Yes.
And it's sort of Sir Humphrey-esque, isn't it? It's a bit like Yes Minister, saying, so did he pass the test? He did all the tests. Did he pass the test? He did all the tests,
yes.
Prime Minister, and so on. And so if that is the case, that was how they got around this, and Starmer genuinely didn't know, then you've got a very senior civil servant in Ollie Robbins, who ran until yesterday, the Foreign Office, lying to the Prime Minister, essentially, to cover this up. We've got to ask why that is. But then we're meant to believe that for many months after that happened, Starmer, every week or every other week in PMQs, was allowed to go out and unknowingly mislead the House of Commons without the top civil servant in the Foreign Office or any of the other people going, actually, that's not true, and this lie has kind of run away with us.
So they watched their own Prime Minister go into TV studios, radio studios, House of Commons, press conferences, wherever, to continue to peddle this line that we did all the relevant security checks and all the rest of it. And a group of people, so I'll take a punt, 2 or 3 people in the Foreign Office knew. Clearly those in the security services knew. Perhaps somebody very senior in Downing Street, which makes it so much worse, knew. But nobody told Keir Starmer, nobody told the Prime Minister. They watched their man go out there into those studios.
Over and over again.
Over and over again, for weeks on end, and no one told him. Should he resign over this? Because there's the question. Because if he wasn't told, that brings in another question about the lack of trust that he commands as a leader.
Right. I think that's a really good point. By the way, it's just a thought that occurred to me in terms of who would have known this. The Americans would have known this, right? The CIA or the rest of it, best spies in the world and all that. They would have known this, and therefore they would have had something to dangle over Mandelson, potentially, that is compromising in itself on this. Just a thought that has occurred to me.
Yes.
Whether he should resign or not, again, do we think this is conceivable, that Starmer didn't know this stuff? I think in either direction, either he did know now and he's lying and he's going to have to go because he lied both to Parliament over and over again and he's lying now, essentially, or he didn't know and is so incompetent at running a government that this stuff was able to go on without him realising it at any point. To some extent, I think we will lose the wood for the trees if we're not careful on some of these points. The broad thing to get in line is the timeline. In December of 2024, Starmer comes out and says, I'm going to make Peter Mandelson the new ambassador. He's great. It's a really awful, cringy press conference. Some people call him a master of business, and to us, he's just Peter. And pass me the bucket.
That was awful.
That was in December. He then fails the vetting the month afterwards. So what do you do if you're the civil service? The Prime Minister's already come out and said this is happening. We're getting his lovely letters from the King to send to Donald Trump, yada yada, all that kind of stuff. And then you go, oh, hang on a minute, the guy has failed for whatever reason. What do we do? At that point, I think you would go to number 10, probably to the Chief of Staff or to the Prime Minister himself and say this, to which they would either say, that's embarrassing, sorry, Peter Mandelson, you can't do it, this is very embarrassing, we'll have to find someone else. Or they say, make it work, don't care, do what you've got to do, I don't need to know. And it is plausible that Morgan McSweeney, the Chief of Staff, could have done that, A, to protect his mate Mandelson, and to insulate the Prime Minister. But if you've got that kind of toxic relationship going on inside there with your number one advisor, that itself is no way to run a government, as is being proven now. And I bet he wishes that they'd all have known at the time that Mandelson had failed the vetting, because it would have saved this scandal that's probably going to bring him down.
Indeed, to be super generous, he could have failed on one bit. He could have failed because he had that night out in Budapest with one of Viktor Orban's head honchos 10 years ago. It could have been he went to an iffy nightclub. It might have just been that. I mean, my money would suggest that this is about Epstein. This is clear. Because the curious thing about that story, and I still can't believe this isn't front page news every day, the fact that when he was the business secretary and the de facto deputy prime minister, he stayed at Epstein's flat while Epstein was in jail for child sex offences. Now, I don't even know how that didn't come out at the time. It's like, where's the Deputy Prime Minister? You need to know where that person is. Oh, he's staying in Jeffrey Epstein. The guy that's in jail for the child sex offence? He's staying there now? Yes, he's there now. That got a free pass for 15 years.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. Again,
could it have been that failed him?
Yeah, of course it could. But we'll have to know now, because again, Starmer has been so darn sanctimonious about transparency for years and years now. We'll have to find out what it is. It may just be the one thing. Because if you're doing your driving test, you get a few minor fails. But if you have a flawless drive and you accidentally hit someone and you get the major fail, still a pretty big reason why you shouldn't get that licence.
So absolutely.
Is it his friendship with this, or is it his business dealings? Because the company that he was of which he was chairman, Global Counsel, folded a month or two ago very quickly. It's a big successful lobbying company, just completely dropped like a house of cards. So was it that? Is it, as Luke de Pulford has pointed out, maybe the fact that Mandelson has been very, very soft on China and the Chinese Communist Party? Is it all of the above? It's a lot of stuff that it could be, and it's not like you didn't know that Mandelson was a fairly slippery fish anyway, right, based on his past history.
Indeed. I mean, the smart money says that in these situations, prime ministers just don't resign. They just don't, and they find enough kind of bluster around the story. I mean, I'm shocked, by the way, and they said that the prime minister knew about this earlier, that he knew about it this week. I'm going from, some are saying Tuesday. I mean, he didn't know about it yesterday, because otherwise they'd have said he only knew about it yesterday. Or if it was the day before, they'd have said yesterday. So I would imagine at the beginning of the week. So he's been to the House of Commons since then, PMQs. Would it not have been better to voluntarily say, I'd like to make a special statement, I found out today? That wouldn't have been okay, but it would have been a morsel of dignity from the Prime Minister, or honesty, if that's the line he's playing.
Yeah, absolutely. You got me nodding like the Churchill talk here. Absolutely right. Yep. That would have been a smart thing to do. It would have been the moral thing to do as well. Instead, he manages to go and really tick off the Speaker, Lindsay Hoyle, I think, in PMQs this week, at just a moment when you probably want the Speaker to, have a bit of good grace and a bit of goodwill with you on this. Yeah. The fact that he didn't do that, I suppose he was trying to get it to be found out what went wrong. But this is, again, this always happens. You think back to Watergate. It's not the crime, it's the cover-up. I suppose in this case, it's a bit of both. Yeah. But if you're Keir Starmer and you discovered, let's give him the benefit of the doubt for half a second, that the top civil servant has lied to you, your old chief of staff, all the rest of it, has made you look like a complete Charlie and all the rest, can you trust the machinery of government to actually get you an honest answer as to what happened here? The best thing to do would be to stand up in front of the country at Prime Minister's questions and say, this happened, I'm looking into it, and I'm telling the public now... because sunlight is the best disinfectant, and this is a message to all the naughty civil servants and all the rest of it, as everybody else. I want to know what happened. That would have been leadership, at the very least. Instead, he didn't do that, and has squirreled around and tried to be as sly and conniving a lawyer as he always has been.
James Price is with us. More coming up, and of course, crucially, over to you. You can call or voice notice on 0344 499 1000. Leave a message on 87222. Let's get a voice note on Keir Starmer from Clark. Morning, Clark.
Good morning, Ian. Great show. I think the scandal being played out over Peter Mandelson is greater than the internal politics that we're seeing about Starmer's internal politics, the judgment that he's shown over recent months. I think what we're seeing now places at risk the future of our United Kingdom, United States special relationship. It puts it at far greater danger than the short-term issues that we've seen going on, for example, between Trump and Starmer. The United States must now be looking very closely at the threats that we pose to their own national security by having our senior diplomats on their soil without appropriate security clearances. This whole situation is more than just an internal scandal. It's a major incident that undermines the trust of our allies in the United Kingdom. Heads need to roll from the top immediately if we're ever to recover the relationships and trust on the world stage. And possibly this even goes as far as a vote of no confidence in this government and potentially a change of the government.
He's just trying to take credit, Keir Starmer, isn't he?
This man is not a leader. He is not the statesman that our country needs. He is failing us at every single level.
Donald Trump understands that Keir Starmer is fundamentally not a patriot.
Yeah.
He's not on the side of the West. He's been appeasing the Iranians in order to shore up his vote in this country.
In front of me is Waitrose, and I'm about to head in there. I literally openly put the stuff in my bag. I nervously walked to the front door and...
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hi, good morning. Yeah, welcome back. It's the Home of Comment. Ian Collins in for Jeremy Kyle on The Breakfast Show, 6:25. Man alive, the head. It's a gift this morning. Is Keir Starmer safe? Can he remain in his position? Has he now lost all authority? It's on the front pages everywhere. Starmer accused of misleading Parliament over Mandelson. Lots of comment coming in from you. Should he go? Should our Prime Minister, on this specific, of all the things you could have got him for, this surely goes to the top of the pile. Let's get a voice note. This comes from Wayne.
Morning, Ian. It's Wayne from Erdington in Birmingham. Nobody takes responsibility in government anymore. Nobody's sacked from the post. And do you know what? They just follow Starmer's lead. He sees no responsibility. He won't accept any responsibility, and his cabinet are the same. These people should be booted out of government, literally kicked out of government. They shouldn't be able to step down, step away, sack these people. They have absolutely no honour. If they had any honour, they'd walk out of the job. They're an absolute disgrace, Ian. Keep up the good work, Mucker. Have a great show.
That is Wayne. I think Wayne should be doing voiceovers.
Well, top man, that's a great voice.
Back in the day, he could have advertised camels or movie trailers, couldn't he? Yeah. From the people that bought you, Jurassic Park.
Just started the voice note with.
Who's doing your voiceover? Do you not know it's Wayne? Wayne does all the voiceovers. Brilliant voice. Wayne, thank you, mate, for that. Have a great day and a great weekend as well. James Price is with us, former government special advisor. So here it is, Keir Starmer. I mean, the ultimate questions are all there. They write themselves. Has he now lost all authority?
I think so. I think it was hanging by a thread anyway, right? There are local elections coming up. There's been all kinds of talk about leadership pushes against him from all sides. He's been too left-wing, he's been not left-wing enough, all the rest of it. I mean, I think, frankly, he should have gone over the Chagos Island stuff. I think that's actually substantively much bigger. The fact that he's talking about the need to give up sovereign British territory for international law, and that he and his Attorney General, Richard Harmer, say you can't do any kind of conflict because trying to defend this country is contrary to international law that leaves us totally weak and vulnerable and all the rest of it. And I could go through, what, another 50-odd scandals? This is the wild thing that I'm probably, I'd like to think, one of the most partisan people in the country. And even I didn't think they'd be this useless this frequently.
It is extraordinary. But on this particular issue, there's so many facets. It's not just, even if Mandelson didn't know, if the Epstein element of this story didn't exist, this would still be a terrible look. But because it is so heavily connected with a man who hung around with a known paedophile, I mean, you don't even need to describe how damning that is. And a Prime Minister decided to appoint him anyway. And now we know a Prime Minister decided to appoint him, even though he failed the security tests, but the Prime Minister apparently didn't know about this. So that would mean Keir Starmer will be waking up in the middle of the night last night going, they didn't tell me. I mean, how angry would you be if this is true?
Well, I just don't think this is true. You played a clip just now from the 5th of February where with Starmer talking publicly and saying, oh, yeah, the process and all the rest of it. So not just lying to Parliament, but to the country. But the day before, he's in Parliament and Kemi Badenoch, the leader of the opposition, asks him, as part of the vetting process, were you made aware, and did it involve Peter Mandelson's relationship with notorious billionaire paedophile Jeffrey Epstein? And Starmer stands up at PMQs and says yes, which says that Starmer was aware of at least some element of that developed vetting security clearance process, which is not normally the case, but you would want that to be fair enough if you're getting some information here. So we're being told then that Starmer knew something about that process, especially about the element to which it relates with this guy Epstein, but then was lied to about the outcome. And so in Starmer's mind, he's got to be, hang on a minute, the guy was considered dodgy enough to be connected to the billionaire paedophile Jeffrey Epstein, but then that wasn't considered, apparently by the own security services, to be damning enough to prevent him from having the highest level of security clearance and go off to the United States of America. That, if true, speaks to a humongous level of incompetence and unsuitability for office for Keir Starmer. And if it's not true, obviously he's lied to all of us and to Parliament, and he's got to go.
I mean, it's as you put it like that, you look at this, go, this is just ridiculous.
It's fantastical, isn't it?
It is. It's fantasy stuff. So, presumably, based on what Keir Starmer said then, the Epstein bit wasn't the damning bit that's failed him the security
what
check.
Could be worse than
so
this,
what
right?
was worse than hanging around with a paedophile? What did he do?
How dodgy are his business dealings, right?
Man alive.
Extraordinary stuff, this. And of course, all the while that we're focusing on these sorts of things, and Starmer now, right, just to play out the next few days,
yes.
Is the government putting up a minister to go and talk about this, to go and defend it with sacrificial lamb to the slaughter? Then there'll be about 11:30 this morning, a big kind of lobby briefing with a load of journalists.
Yep.
How are they going to get through that? Then they've got to make it through to, they say, the Sunday newspapers, Sunday morning shows. They have to put somebody up for that. Will they get to that? Then on Monday, they'll be facing loads of urgent questions in Parliament from the opposition parties. So they'll have to put out their own statement on that. If they make it through that, they've got to get to Prime Minister's questions, where everybody will be licking their lips to have a go at him. So you've got the next 5 days, the leadership of this country, although Starmer is apparently running off to France today for some complete non-deal, will be focused on Starmer.
He's going on another aeroplane.
Yeah, oh yeah, of course. I mean, maybe just make it a one-way trip at this point.
True.
Here, right?
Yeah.
So the next 5 days will be taken up with trying to survive all the kind of hurdles and roadblocks. And therefore, what will it not be about?
Yeah.
It will not be about the cost of living in this country.
No.
It will not be about defending us from Vladimir Putin, who I think on the front of the Mirror says is targeting 4 British cities to destroy or something.
Yeah.
Not focusing on anything that matters to the alarm clock Brits who are getting up and going to work this morning. And that is absolutely unforgivable, especially with local elections coming up.
Well, one person who is calling for his resignation is the leader of the opposition, Kemi Badenoch.
I think it is utterly preposterous that the Prime Minister is saying now that he had no idea Peter Mandelson failed the security vetting. Didn't he ask? He's a lawyer. He should have taken reasonable and practical steps to obtain basic information. If he's saying he didn't know, he is telling the country that he is incompetent, and that means he shouldn't be running the government. If the Prime Minister does not know what is happening in his own office, he should not be in charge of our economy, our energy, our defence, or anything else. He should go.
Unarguable points from Kemi, really. I mean, a 6-year-old could work this out. If he didn't know, then what authority does Keir Starmer have?
Right, absolutely right. Again, just take it without having to get into the minutiae of the timings and all of the rest of it. If you were aware, as Starmer admitted that he was, that there was a link between Peter Mandelson, the man he wanted to send off to be the ambassador to America, and Jeffrey Epstein, and you're relying on like some technical points where, Mandelson said he didn't actually quite know the extent of it, even though he did, because as you said earlier, he was staying at Epstein's house after convictions for sex trafficking, right? Yeah. How does that pass basic logical muster? Right? Because all of us know, and we all try and get our heads around this Epstein scandal more broadly, whatever has been going on, whatever was going on with Epstein is so odd that you do end up sounding a bit like a conspiracy theorist when you discuss it. Right? Why did Epstein have all this money? Why did he have all these clients?
True.
Why is it? What's going on with all of it? The relationship with security services. People have mentioned about the American security services, the Russian, the Israeli. You start going into conspiracy theory territory, but something like that must be true for all of this stuff going on. And yet you think into that, you send a man so compromised in the form of Peter Mandelson that he can't pass British security vetting. That alone, resignation issue.
Absolutely. Resignation issue for Keir Starmer. Maggie says, so once again, he didn't know. It didn't pass his desk. Yeah, Keir, pull the other one. Mandy's post in the White House was a high position. And he didn't know. How stupid does he think the British people are, says Maggie. Fair comment. Gary in Bolton says, you'd think Starmer worked to the BBC at this rate. It seems they're only junior heads role, even though Starmer's own words, when Boris was Prime Minister, means he must go. Indeed. I mean, he called for Boris's resignation almost every half an hour for one reason or another. And here you have something of this magnitude. Nothing's happening. Mark in Sleepy Selby says, morning Ian and James, how does one become a human shield for Keir? Does the gig come with a title and pension? I'm willing to take one for the team, for the Labour team, for appropriate remuneration. Yeah, I mean, I understand there's certain things you think where the Prime Minister doesn't need to be bogged down with that level of detail. He's got bigger fish to fry. There's a system in place. You know this from working in government. If there's been an argument with the receptionist, at the MOD, you don't need to really tell the Prime Minister that Pam from accounts isn't talking to Joe on the reception. I mean, he doesn't need to know that. Might be a big story at the MOD. But stuff like this, it's unthinkable, inconceivable that the Prime Minister shouldn't have known. I mean, it would be their duty, you'd have thought, to tell. David Lammy, we haven't even mentioned Lammy. He was head of the Foreign Office at the time. Now, David Lammy doesn't really know what day of the week it is, so maybe that's why they didn't tell Lammy. So he didn't know, but the senior officials in the Foreign Office did know, and Starmer didn't know either. It is... I mean, we're going to just keep repeating it. It's unthinkable.
Absolutely right. And just very briefly on this point, in the United Kingdom, our tradition with appointing senior diplomats and ambassadors is to appoint career diplomats and ambassadors, right? You go into that civil service for a very long time. There are strengths and weaknesses of that, obviously. You look at the American system, for example, the person they always send to be the ambassador to the Court of St. James here tends to be a senior businessman or party supporter or something like that. So in Trump's first term, it was Woody Johnson of Johnson & Johnson. You know, people using the shampoos as we speak, probably, right? Yeah. But here we don't do that. It's career appointments. And that means that the Labour Party went out of their way and broke a load of conventions and all the rest of it anyway to actively put Mandelson in this position. Dame Karen Pierce, who was the ambassador, who's doing a great job by all accounts, was forced out because
she got booted out because they wanted Mandelson there.
And they knew they'd have to bend the rules and all the rest of it, but they thought it was such a good idea to put the best mate of a notorious billionaire, Peter Farage, Jeffrey Epstein, into that post that they were willing to bend rules, and now it turns out break them all completely. So the idea that Starmer wouldn't know, despite this being something they were actively pushing, is absolutely nonsense.
Well, it's that, without sounding poncy about it, it's Plato's noble lie, isn't it? That you can do this because it's, you know, for the greater good.
Absolutely.
The little people don't need to know about this stuff. You know?
And that's what the Labour Party have had all the way along, right? They think because we're good people, it justifies us doing all kinds of terrible things. It justifies us, you know, betraying the troops and going after special forces veterans and raising taxes on people who actually work hard, and all the terrible things that they do as well, because they're good people.
They're good people. Yeah, we're on the right side of it. We know stuff you don't know. You know, even in the moral sphere of life, we know. You know, we are that group. And when you look at the kind of somebody mentioned it the other day. Was it you, James? I can't remember. That sort of trio of sort of Alistair Campbell and the Ollie Robbins of this world. This collective that really thought they had the pulse of something that no one else could feel. Like sort of Madame Arcati as some kind of psychic that had a special ability to be able to understand and see what us little people can't. Curious times. James Price still with us. 0344 499 1000. So many messages coming in on this. Should Keir Starmer resign? Has he lost all authority over this? 0344 499 1000. That's where you leave a voice note. You can message 87222. Let's have a listen to Kev. Morning, Kev.
So, surely he's guilty by ignorance, old Starmer. I mean, whether he knew or not is not the point. The fact is, he should have known.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk 0344 499 1000. So many comments coming through. Margaret says, Ian and James, yes, he should go. Will he have the brass neck to cling on? Someone must have or should have told him. He's the Prime Minister. Bye-bye, never hear Keir, says Margaret in Birmingham. We had a lot of fun with that at the time, didn't we? Two-tier Keir, two-tier free gear Keir, two-tier free gear, no beer Keir. It just went every week. There was another one. I think at one point on the afternoon show, we collated about 30 rhyming moments for Keir. It was a beautiful... But no other Prime Minister has lent themselves to such wordery as Keir did with his gear and his free gear.
Right, well, and they're all totally justified. I mean, the free gear point you mentioned earlier about Lord Ali is going around saying we don't know any rich people, all the rest of it. I mean, presumably in half of the shots that we still watch of Starmer, and he's on the front page of the Telegraph wearing a pair of glasses, those are still the Lord Ali glasses, I suspect, right? Yep. And by the way, just as a tiny point, why, when he's not wearing a suit and tie, is he always wearing these dark navy shirts? Right? I think he just looks dreadful and un-prime ministerial about it. One of the few things apparently he cares about is dress codes. He gets very obsessive about dress codes for meetings, and yet still looks like a sort of low-rent magician in these things, not to insult low-rent magicians.
No, sometimes you have to go low-rent when booking a magician because, if you want some table magic, then the good ones are gone very quickly. Yeah, I reckon Starmer's that... Somebody told him when he was about 15 he looks good in a dark blue shirt, and he's never lost that kind of advice.
He shouldn't forgive that friend for that advice.
Indeed. Joanna in Salisbury, I'm intrigued to know, in such a long list, what Mandelson failed his security test.
Right, a great question.
I mean, that is the... So apparently, because bearing in mind, Starmer talked about knowing that Epstein was raised in the security thing, so we have to assume it's not that. Because if it was that, that makes it even worse than we're currently discussing it. So what else could it have been?
Or did Mandelson lie about it? Because of the way that these interviews go, they know the answers to almost all of the questions ahead of time, and they're willing to see whether you're being honest or not. Yeah. So I've had this with friends who've gone through this process, and a nice sort of little old lady walks in looking all very sweet and everything, and says, when you watched video, including, all manner of incredibly explicit, horrifying things that would make listeners' eyes water at this time of day, is that the stuff you normally watch, and so on? And if you fib about it, then you're more likely to fail, because they're trying to see, are you willing to be honest and go with the process? So for a man like Peter Mandelson, for whom lying is second nature, I imagine that was quite tricky. But is it the Epstein stuff? Is it the links to the Chinese Communist Party? Is it any other dodgy business dealings? Is it the fact that, which bit of the Epstein stuff? It's not just him being a friend of him, but there are some emails that came out in these Epstein files where Epstein says things to him like, would you like me to find you a Cuban American? And he says, oh, yes, please, yum, 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 and all this sort of stuff. Yes. I wonder what all that's about. I wonder if that came up in the security vetting.
Yeah, it could have been that kind of stuff, couldn't it? Zoe in Lancashire says Starmer is going to say he wasn't aware and it never crossed his damn desk. Again, he will slip through the net, says Zoe. Mandy in Surrey, good morning. So, we have another scandal regarding our Prime Minister and another call for resignation. This man will hang on with his fingernails to this job. He really thinks he's doing a good job and the rest of us don't know what we are talking about. I doubt he will resign until reform force him out in 2029, says Mandy. Now, I would disagree slightly on Mandy's point. I think he will resign. As you rightly say, it's not going to happen this side of May the 7th. But this comes firmly under the category of be careful what you wish for, doesn't it? Because Starmer goes, enter into the fray Angela Rayner, Andy Burnham, a conglomerate of left-wing monstrosities.
Right, and this is a very, very good point. What Starmer has done to this country is almost unforgivable, but compared to what will come afterwards, I mean, for my money, it'll be Ed Miliband. Ed Miliband is the most popular figure in the cabinet amongst all the Labour Party members. There's been doing the rounds, I think, quite effectively with the backbenchers. Doesn't have the kind of skeletons that Angela Rayner has got, and still trying to pay off her tax bill. True. Doesn't have the same kind of baggage that plenty of others have. And at a time when, ironically, energy is a massive topic, and going on with Iran and the Straits of Hormuz and all these sorts of things, I think Miliband can do a mad kind of messiah type moment of saying, no, this is our time for Britain to show global leadership. Granny will starve in her or freeze in her cottage over the winter, but it will be for the greater good of the new religion of climate change and net zero and all the rest of it. And the Labour members who had to put up with, we've had to do some dull things like, not kill all the rich people or whatever it is that they secretly want to do. Miliband will say all this stuff to them. And the thing I've learned from a long time in Westminster now, things can always get worse.
Yeah.
And that's what Miliband looks like. I think it's him.
You genuinely think Miliband will be the next Prime Minister?
Yep. And the beautiful thing about it is that it's somebody that the British public roundly rejected at the polls back in 2015, which is exactly what you'd expect Labour to do, the worst possible thing for them and the country. I think it's him. Scary, huh?
You've just made me feel rather bilious.
I'm so sorry.
It's like, what are they? Can I get a flight to Lebanon? Because that might be preferable at the moment.
Go kayaking in the Persian Gulf. Yeah?
Someone on Twitter says, if we simply rename the English Channel Keir Starmer's Desk, then nothing will cross it. Small boat crisis solved. Beautiful.
Yep, tweet of the day.
That is tweet of the day. 0344 499 1000. David in Ayrshire says, if the government chooses to overrule the judgment of the security services on Mandelson and his suitability to be our US ambassador, then also overturn the security services advice on the location of the Chinese embassy. What does that tell us about this administration? Quite a lot, really.
It's a great point. And again, it opens up this whole Pandora's box of either, if you're Keir Starmer, and again, let's for a second give him thought experiment, benefit of the doubt, that he was genuinely just lied to, he's never going to be able to trust senior civil servants ever again, right? How can you trust the other advice? When you stand up at PMQs or whatever, you've got the big binder in front of you, and you're given a statistic about crime rates or healthcare or education or whatever, are you going to trust it? Because you couldn't trust them on this. Are you going to be able to trust the security services advice, or not the security service, because they're the ones who did this right, but any other Foreign Office stuff on, as you say, the mega embassy, what's happening in Iran, what's happening in the White House, what's happening in Europe, and all the rest. It might explain why Starmer's got this mad obsession with trying to get us closer to the European Union, because it might be that the Europhiles in the Foreign Office are also lying to him about how beneficial that would be.
Oh, what
right? We can't trust any of this stuff anymore.
We can't. Well, talking of things that send your hippocampus into overdrive, we're going to be talking about Harry and Meghan in just a sec. I know, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry,
Bring back Mandelson.
I know, we lied to you when we said, could you come in this morning? And you said, you're not going to be talking about Harry and Meghan. We went, no, there's none of that.
They just want their privacy, Ian.
But we have. That's all they want. So what better way to achieve that than a massive public spotlit tour of Australia? Kinsey Schofield joins us next on Talk.
Away we go.
The world is on fire. Russia, Iran, China, conflicts brewing in all of their different regions. They're not waiting. But here in Britain, our armed forces are underfunded, they're undermanned, and they're underprepared. And nobody in government wants to talk about it. Well, we do. I'm Philip Ingram, and I spent my career in the world of intelligence, military planning, strategic planning, and unfortunately, conflict. This is Talk War, and this is where we analyse the conflicts shaping our world.
Across the UK.
It is Talk. Welcome. Good morning. So much going on. Ian Collins in for Jeremy Kyle on The Breakfast Show. We're the home of common sense. James Price is with us, former government special advisor. I mean, there is only one big story in town, and that is, of course, the curious revelation that Peter Mandelson actually failed his security check for the job of UK ambassador to the United States. But don't worry, Keir Starmer knew nothing about it. Yeah, he knew nothing about it. He's the Prime Minister. He didn't know about it. So it's either that or nobody told him, and both of those scenarios are pretty bad for Keir Starmer. Will he walk the plank? Will we see him wave goodbye from number 10 in the next few weeks? We'll continue to take calls on that. More comment from James as well. Great messages from you. If you want to drop us a voice note on this, should Keir Starmer resign, 0344 499 1000. We are going to take a moment to update on what is happening with that royal, not royal tour down under. Harry and Meghan in Australia. Kinsey Schofield is back with us, of course. Kinsey, as you know, is host of the Kinsey Schofield Unfiltered show. Good morning to you, Kinsey. Nice to have you with us as ever. Harry and Meghan and their tour raising alarms in royal circles. They really know how to press all the wrong buttons, this pair.
Well, can I just say, since I've been a fan of Ian Collins, I've seen you guys go through 4 prime ministers. Are you the common denominator, Ian Collins?
That's
what I'm concerned about.
You know what, Kinsey? That's a very good point, actually. When I'm not on air, like at the weekend, no one resigns.
Exactly.
When I'm here, people resign. I've noticed that. It seems to be very much a Monday to Friday thing.
You know the solution for that, by the way, is that you're going to have to be a Prime Minister soon.
You look like one. I trust the hell out of you. Can I say that on
You can trust that. You can. Yeah.
Absolutely right. Well, it can't be any worse, can you?
I mean, there is a job going, by the looks of things. But I then have to join the Labour Party, which obviously, Kinsey, as you're aware of how Britain works as well. I know this, but that would be like joining Kamala Harris's Democrats.
No, you wouldn't do that. That's why we trust you. Unfortunately, you wouldn't do that, and that is why we trust you. But yes, I know that you have been waiting with bated breath for an update on the Harry and Meghan saga.
I haven't slept because I'm waiting for an update on this, Kinsey. I'm so enamoured by this tour. I'm following every moment.
It's keeping you up at night.
Have they? Can I just ask this? Sorry, have they held a koala bear yet? Because that seems to be—that's what you're meant to do, isn't it? If you go to Australia.
Not exactly. Not yet. We haven't received those images yet. But I do typically associate Meghan Markle with chlamydia, so that's a great question. I would say is that
she stole my joke.
I was thinking that this was looking really good for them, actually, and I was going to have to bite my tongue and go, well, they knocked it out of the ballpark, but then they opened their own, mouth. Yeah. There's Meghan saying, I'm the most bullied person in the world after Catherine, the Princess of Wales, was tortured through the process of her cancer battle. People saying she was having a Brazilian butt lift, she was in a coma, she died, the palace was covering it up. Horrible things were being said about her all over the internet. And here's Meghan saying, I'm the most bullied person in the world. Then Harry saying that being a royal killed my mother and I don't want to be a royal either, yet he's pretending to be a royal in Australia. And actually, my friend, it was a drunk driver and a lack of a seatbelt that unfortunately took your mother's life, who no longer was a royal because she was divorced from your father. And it's like they always self-sabotage. Like when I think I'm going to have to eat my words, it's like they screw it up themselves.
That's why you need a koala bear, you see. Just grab one of those sif-ridden beasts and you're home and dry. I mean, because everything else gets forgotten. Oh, look, there's Harry with a koala. That they could stop all of these horrendous headlines. There are a couple of other royal stories while you're with us. Front page of The Sun. There it is. Look, they found Fergie. I don't
He
mean the
did.
former Manchester United manager. I'm talking about Sarah Ferguson.
I mean, thank goodness for Matt Wilkinson, not just a stud, but also a very good reporter
Yes.
who located Fergie. I mean, we've heard for months whispers that she could be at skiing often in the world, but Matt actually has proof that she was pictured hiding out in a 2,000-pound-a-night ski chalet in Austria. Jeffrey Epstein continues to be a topic of conversation on your show this morning. She's been hiding out because she doesn't want any of the negative press, because in that massive DOJ dump, you saw how vulgarly friendly she was with this convicted sex offender, visiting him right after he's released with prison with her daughters, calling him a supreme friend.
Yeah.
And she's trying to hide away because, you know, she knows that time, you know, hopefully time heals all wounds and maybe she can pop up and reinvent herself inevitably. But right now, I think she's just trying to stay out of the headlines, and unfortunately the Sun got her.
The Sun got her. There's a pitch. She looks like she's playing a cameo as an annoying neighbour in Curb Your Enthusiasm or something, doesn't she? She did. I mean, there she is, baseball cap, kind of.
I thought she looked like Elton John.
There's a little bit of Elton John going on, sort of vaguely studious, pseudo-studious glasses, and a bag, like a bag lady. Yeah. I mean, what has happened to her? Long time no see, Fergie, is the headline. As you say, great reporting from Matt and Amir on the front page of The Sun this morning. And just a final one on Andrew. He's been invited to relinquish the freedom of the city. From where? What's happening here?
What a nice way to say, we no longer want you involved in this. So this is elected members of the City of London Corporation, and they've agreed to formally invite Andrew to relinquish his freedom of the city.
That's a very generous invitation, isn't it?
Yeah.
We invite you to sack yourself.
Yeah, that's like your boyfriend calling you saying, I am inviting you to break up with me.
Yeah.
Okay, I really don't want to do this myself. A spokesperson said that elected members have agreed to write him a nice little letter to informally ask him to do it. They will consider the response received, if any, at a future meeting to determine what action may be taken. I have a feeling he's going to ghost him. If we're being honest, I don't think he's going to respond to this at all.
Yeah. Can I just ask finally, when do Harry and Meghan finally leave the Australians to get on with their lives?
Like, thoughts and prayers to Australia. Meghan is currently gearing up for her 3-day retreat. So once that wraps up, and you know there are going to be some secret spies in there, Ian, and then I'm going to have plenty more coverage for you of what wise and just what wisdom Meghan pulls out of you-know-where during that 3-day retreat for those weirdos willing to pay $3,000 to sit in front of her.
Yeah, I wish I was there. Kinsey, thank you as ever. Kinsey Schofield, host of Kinsey Schofield Unfiltered, with us on the programme. Thank you to her. 0344 499 1000. There's an Australian film, it's an old film, called Picnic on Hanging Rock. I don't know if you're familiar with this, James. And I think it was... I've got this muddled somewhere. Someone will correct me on it. I think there's a bunch of school kids that went to the outback and some disappeared, sort of Bermuda Triangle style. I think some disappeared or something like that. And I'm just wondering if that's maybe where they should go, to the location of Picnic and Hanging Rock. Just go on, guys, go for a walk, and just to see what happens. You never know.
As we know, they're so desperate for their privacy, they're going on another worldwide tour. It might be a good idea.
Yeah.
I do think there's an important logical jump that we should just help fill in, because Kinsey Schofield told that great line that stole my joke on this. But in case some listeners and viewers weren't aware, statistically, if you see a koala, it will have chlamydia, because the majority of them will do. I'm not sure what the connection to Meghan Markle may be, other than obviously them holding a koala bear and that being a risk. But just to fill that in for people, and if there wasn't enough of Epstein and Mandelson to make them feel sick this morning.
Yeah. I refuse to hold a koala. I went to Melbourne Zoo. Okay, I did a series of shows a few years ago in Australia. I went to the zoo at Melbourne. They said, we'll take you behind the sscenes. You know, I held a frilled lizard, you know, one of those sort of things, disgusting creature. And the guy says, you want to hold...
we weren't talking about Mandelson anymore.
Do you want to hold a koala? I went, no, thanks. No idea.
Yes,
I don't want to catch something.
Stand up yourself.
Cute.
Lazy bear.
Absolute filthy beasts they are. So, James, we are out of time. Let's put a timer on it. When will the Prime Minister be gone?
10.
This
9.
morning. I thought when you said 10, I thought, really?
7, 6.
Yeah.
I think after the May local elections, they'll keep him on until then. They'll throw it all on him and they'll try and restart with someone.
Will it be
like
this that
Miliband.
takes him down?
It'll be this plus Chagos, plus all the uselessness, plus the fact that they've had to not spend all of rich people's money and destroy the country yet.
It's a fair comment. James, great to have you on with us.
Thank you,
as
mate.
ever. James Price, former government special advisor, with us on the programme. So many more guests. One big story in town. Should the Prime Minister resign? Has he run out of road? Can anybody really trust him? Let's get the news at 7.
My fellow Americans, let me begin by congratulating the team at NASA and our brave astronauts on the successful launch of Artemis 2. It was quite something. It will be traveling further than any manned rocket has ever flown and will very substantially pass the moon, go around it, and come back home from a distance that has never been done before. It's amazing.
Roger, roll pitch. Integrity, AMT high.
Due to that suit being pressurized and expanded, as well as the umbilicals being connected.
We are now falling to the moon rather than rising away from Earth. It is an amazing milestone.
We are standing by for the integrity crew aboard Orion to surpass the Apollo 13 record.
Integrity, we're now resuming operational audio contact.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hi, good morning. 3 minutes after 7 o'clock. Welcome to the Home of Common Sense. Ian Collins in for Jeremy Carr. We reached the end of a busy news week. This time yesterday, I mentioned this in the last hour, this time yesterday, no one thought Peter Mandelson would be the lead story. The Prince of Darkness is back in the headlines. Turns out they knew all along this man was not fit for purpose, but they persisted anyway. This is a mess. And it's fair to say the Prime Minister is up to his neck in it.
There was then, I should add, security vetting carried out independently by the security services, which is an intensive exercise that gave him clearance for the role, and you have to go through that before you take up the post.
Well, there it is, in his own words. He got clearance for the role. Except he didn't. He actually failed the security test. The Prime Minister said, I know nothing about it. Well, it doesn't sound like that, does it? Seriously, can Starmer survive this one? It is inconceivable that he didn't know. It's either that or this is a man running a government where his most senior advisors decided not to tell him. In what world would you not inform the Prime Minister that a senior figure had failed security checks for a senior job. If the PM doesn't have that kind of confidence from his own team, then surely his number is up. Elsewhere, and it's worth just throwing this in as well, because we talked a lot about this yesterday, still no information from Surrey Police on the identity of the alleged rape gang in Epsom. When a story gathers this much momentum and locals again gather on the streets to ask for answers, you might think the police chief would make a statement, but there's been a haunting silence coming out of Epsom. The latest on that as well. Everything you need to know. We will bring you all the breaking news. Incredible response on Keir Starmer here this morning. Let's get a voice note on this very point from Derris. Morning, Derris.
Can you really say due process was followed if Mandelson failed the vetting process and yet was still appointed as ambassador? Is that following due process? I would have thought not. I would have thought if you fail, you don't get the job. That's just my threepenny anyway. So anyway, we'll wait and see how he wriggles out of it, as he probably will over the next few days. It should be interesting. Have a good day, both of you. It's really nice listening to both of you in the morning. Sets me up for the day. Bye.
Thank you, Derris. It's only me now. James Price has legged it for a full English in a greasy spoon somewhere. Great point. Yes, the wiggle manoeuvre. I think when you become Prime Minister, you're taken into a room somewhere and says, oh, Prime Minister, before you start the big job in your new first day, we need to talk you through the wiggle manoeuvre. There's a group of kind of very senior experts who run through how to do the wiggle. If you find yourself in choppy waters, this is bonkers, and these are indeed choppy waters. Nigel Evans is with us, former Deputy Speaker of the House of Commons. Nigel, I mean, again, 24 hours ago, we had no idea this story was going to break, and this is just, it hasn't just revived the Mandelson story, because that hadn't fully gone away. We're still pending more information. Of course, there's a police investigation ongoing, but this has thrown an absolute stick of dynamite under it, and in particular under Keir Starmer's suitability for office.
Yeah, and I'm really grateful to the Guardian newspaper for breaking this.
It's not often we say that, is it?
No, it's not often. But I think we're in incredible territory now, Ian. All the leaders of all the major political parties other than the Labour Party are now calling on the Prime Minister to resign. It's got that big. I thought last night as I went to bed that who is he going to throw under the bus? Surely he couldn't throw Ollie Robbins, the most senior Foreign Office civil servant. And I woke up this morning to find out that's exactly what he did. Now, we remember that he threw Morgan McSweeney under the bus originally to kill the Mandelson story, and now he's got rid of the most senior civil servant. And it's quite incredible. I've done a lot of reading around this subject, Ian. There's over 1,000 comments on the Times newspaper already today, and you've just got to read some of them just to know how deep the trouble that Keir Starmer is now in. We're in the territory of implausible deniability. We are talking about the appointment of Peter Mandelson, somebody that the Foreign Office, we were told, didn't really want in that job. It is the most important diplomatic role that there is in the United Kingdom, that he had to go through this full vetting, developed vetting procedure. And yet, you know, this clip of Keir Starmer having a press conference on the 5th of February telling everybody that he'd gone through it all and how important it was. And yet we're now, it's now been revealed that he failed that procedure, and yet he was still appointed for the job. It's very interesting. There's a letter gone out from both Yvette Cooper and Ollie Robbins to the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, and Emily Thornberry is chair of that, and even she is saying, why were we kept in the dark? Well, it's a bit more than being kept in the dark, because it's what was said and what was not said was the important thing. And in that letter, it is said that Mandelson went through this developed vetting procedure. And then at the end, it says, after the process concluded with the developed vetting, clearance being granted by the Foreign Commonwealth Development Office in advance of Lord Mandelson taking up the post. It's what's not said. At no stage was it said, and this was signed by Ollie Robbins, at no stage was it said that Mandelson had failed that procedure. So are we now being told that Ollie Robbins knew about this, that the buck stops with him? And we know he's being thrown under the bus, and I don't know how many other buses there are in Downing Street to throw people under, but surely they've run out of buses now.
Yeah, well, there's the one that ran over Morgan McSweeney's telephone, but that's another story.
And so Ollie Robbins, the most senior civil servant, got this information, allowed the Prime Minister to make press conferences where he said basically the vetting procedure has been followed, everything's been followed, that he allows the Prime Minister to stand at the dispatch box at Prime Minister's questions to give a similar story.
Yeah.
It's implausible deniability. If it's not that, then it's that the Prime Minister, when he knows the controversy that is surrounding this particular appointment, at no stage is sufficiently curious enough at any stage to say to any of his officials, by the way, has Peter Mandelson passed vetting? I mean, he must have asked that question himself at some stage.
Well, you might have thought so. And it's curious because, of course, and you'll know more about this, and we'll come to a little bit of the detail in what Mr Summer should have maybe done earlier this week. But, of course, what you say in the Commons, as distinct to what you might say in a press conference, even if it's in Downing Street, are very different, of course, because the weight and the requirement of you to be absolutely transparent, crystal clear and truthful is on you in the Commons. But this is what he did say in September, reference Peter Mandelson in the House of Commons. Here's the Prime Minister.
Speaker, as she and the House would expect, full due process was followed during this appointment, as it is with all ambassadors. The ambassador has repeatedly expressed his deep regret. He is right to do so. He's now playing an important part in the US-UK relationship.
Right, so, Nigel, here's the thing. So full due process was followed, which is very different. That's not a lie. Full due process was followed. I know Emily Thornberry has been getting angry about this. She's the chair of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee. She's had some of the mandarins and the head honchos from the Foreign Office in there. They pretty much seem to play the same line. Yet we followed all the process. At no point, and I don't think the committee even thought to say, did he fail it? I don't think that was understandably a consideration. So they never got to that stage, but nobody volunteered that information. So Starmer has probably told the truth there. The due process was followed, but admitting that he failed the process. Now, Starmer's claiming he didn't know about this until this week. I mean, this to me is just inconceivable. However, I'm going to ask you this, Nigel. Parliamentary protocol, from being in that Speaker's chair, and for many years you stood there as the Deputy Speaker, so you're familiar with the protocol and all the rules and regulations. Should the Prime Minister, if we are to believe that he only found out this week, which is frankly fantasy stuff, but if he did, benefit of the doubt, should he not have come to Parliament almost instantly to make that announcement? He seems to have been forced into this by Pippa Carrera from The Guardian and others, as distinct from saying, I need to... So he went through PMQs this week knowing this information was out there.
No, that's absolutely right. No, the rules are absolutely clear that as soon as you get to know that you have misled the House, which is clearly what happened in this case, that the duty is for whoever it happens to be. It covers the Prime Minister, but it could be a backbencher as well, that they need to stand up in the House of Commons and immediately correct the record. He should have done it on Tuesday. He could have done it prior to Prime Minister's questions. Yep. So you're absolutely right. The Prime Minister on Wednesday went into PMQs fully knowing that Peter Mandelson had failed the vetting procedure if he did not know before. No wonder the Prime Minister was so testy during Prime Minister's questions. He took it out on the Speaker, as you may recall, when the Speaker told him to focus on answering the questions. And part of the problem, and one of the reasons why the Speaker has said that to Starmer, is because when Kemi Badenoch asked again and again and again to the Prime Minister, had he had that conversation with Peter Mandelson, he avoided answering the question. And then, as you know, on Wednesday, when Keir Starmer left the chamber, he had a word with the Speaker and banged the side of the chair where the Speaker sits. So we know he was angry. Well, we absolutely know he was angry. Yeah. But the responsibility should have been right after Prime Minister's questions, he should then have said, I would like to make a statement to correct the record.
Sure.
So let's see where we are now, Ian. We know that the Prime Minister is going to France today. He's having chats with his opposite number, Emmanuel Macron, to talk about opening the Straits of Hormuz. Even that in itself is a ridiculous waste of time when we know that the reason the straits are not open is because Donald Trump has decided to put his own blockade in there. So even this exercise is a complete irrelevance. But when we get back to the House on Monday, we now know that he is going to make a statement to correct the record, which he should have done on either Tuesday or Wednesday. My expectation clearly is it's not going to end there. No. And we've still got more revelations to come out, I am absolutely certain, later today, Saturday, and then, of course, we've got the Sunday papers. Yeah. I would then expect an application to go into the Speaker for what we call an SO24. It's a Standing Order 24, which is to have an emergency debate on an issue that is of huge public interest. Nothing can be of greater public interest than the Prime Minister, the accusation that he has now lied or misled Parliament. I mean, you've only got to read the front page of the Daily Mail today, Dan Hodges, where he talks about deceit, deception and duplicity. That's the front page of the Daily Mail. So I expect an application to go in. I suspect it would be irresistible when you all the leaders of the major parties saying that Keir Starmer should now resign, that application would not go ahead and that there would be a full debate. So, you know, if you're looking at some quotes as well, Ian, when you get Labour ministers anonymously saying that we really should have no more excuses and that you can't really put the blame on Ollie Robbins, and we've reached a tipping point. That is where we are. I believe we have now reached a tipping point. He either knew and misled the House, or he wasn't sufficiently curious to even ask, has Peter Mandelson passed the vetting process? Even the expectation that Ollie Robbins felt quite comfortable, this is what we're being asked to believe.
Yes.
To hold back this information that he knew that Mandelson had failed the vetting process, and that at no stage that it was necessary to tell the Prime Minister.
It's unbelievable. So he either knew and lied on this issue, or he didn't know, and that's just as bad in many respects for a Prime Minister, that the team around you, the head honchos at the Foreign of Ollie Robbins, as senior as it gets, decided not to inform the Prime Minister that the man he was going to appoint to ambassador in the United States had failed a security check. It's worth having a listen as well, because obviously, and by the way, we are going to be speaking to Dan Hodges a little later. Nigel Farage is going to be on with us too, talking about Keir Starmer, so stand by for all of that. Let's just play this as well, Nigel. This was in February, talking about the vetting procedure of Mandelson.
Can the Prime Minister tell us, did the official security vetting he received mention Mandelson's ongoing relationship with the paedophile Jeffrey Epstein?
So clear. Prime Minister?
Yes, it did.
Wow. I mean, that was a wow moment, Nigel. Now, what we extrapolate now from the wow is that it clearly wasn't that bit, we have to assume, that he failed the security vetting on. Otherwise, surely Keir Starmer would have absolutely known. So it must be something even worse than hanging around with a convicted paedophile. I mean, one can only wonder and speculate what that might be.
Yeah, and it's a year earlier. It was January of 25 that Mandelson failed the vetting procedure. Now, we're fast forwarding to Kemi Badenoch asking those questions, were there any red flags raised from the vetting procedure? And yet we know Keir Starmer knew red flags were raised, but he didn't know that Mandelson had failed that procedure, really. So somebody told him that there were red flags, but they didn't tell him that Mandelson had failed that procedure. Now, if that is the case, if Ollie Robbins had kept all that information back, we know that he's lost the confidence of Yvette Cooper, the Foreign Secretary, and the Prime Minister. Then we're saying what? That now Ollie Robbins he's resigned from his post. He's going to get a payoff, I assume a severance pay. He's then going to keep his pension after basically allowing the Prime Minister to go into the House of Commons and mislead the House of Commons about the vetting procedure.
I mean, that is literally where we're at, isn't it? I mean, that's the state of affairs.
If I was Ollie Robbins, I'd be very angry, because if this is not the case, and if the Prime Minister did know, then of course the reputational damage done to Ollie Robbins is absolutely
it's massive, and he would have, I would assume, an unfair dismissal case on his hands based on that scenario. I mean, finally, Nigel, very simply, can Keir Starmer survive this?
No, and if I was a Labour backbencher who was knocking on doors for the local elections or the Welsh Assembly, Scottish Parliament, then I'd be very angry today. I mean, if they want to keep him on for another 3 weeks and then put the blame on getting rid of him on the dismal results of those elections, so be it. But the reality is that as dire as the predictions are about the elections, they've just got a whole lot worse. And there's going to be a lot of council candidates, some of them probably are Labour councillors who've been councillors for 20 and 30 years. Sure. Are now going to be pushed over the top and are going to be gunned down simply because the buck will always be refused to stop at Keir Starmer. The reality is that he's run out of road for that can that he's been kicking down for the past 12 months or longer. He's just run out of road. He's run out of buses to throw people under. The buck now stops with Keir Starmer. And my own belief is that he should go now.
Nigel, great to have you with us as ever. Have a cracking weekend. Nigel Evans, former Deputy Speaker at the House of Commons. Thank you to him. Very thorough stuff. I mean, this is such a huge story. It's pivotal. It's about integrity. It's about honesty. It's about transparency. How much did he bang on about transparency? You know, the whole point of Starmer, and it was quite curious that, you know, the plan, when he came into government, surely he's got a big plan. And there was no big plan. Those that have worked up close to him, who've spoken off the record on these things, say he's the least curious man that anyone has ever worked with in parliamentary. So he's just not that curious about stuff. And he certainly doesn't have a plan. And he's now, it looks like, been rumbled. It's last chance. It's not even last chance saloon. I mean, he's on his way back out down the steps of that saloon, I think. But it's just a case of when he goes to many people. Your thoughts on Keir Starmer? 0344 499 1000. Let's get a voice note on this. Morning, Laura.
It's Laura in Wiltshire. I'm just staggered by this whole story. And I was just talking to my husband, who said, why? Why would they have done all of this cover-up to get Mandelson in? Why would Ollie Robbins and Morgan McSweeney have done all of this? And if Starmer knew, why? It stinks. Great show.
Current affairs, international news, letting criminals off while sending... Oi! Oi! You shut up! I'm trying to record something. Stand by for 3 powerhouse hours of breaking news, challenging views.
I don't give a flying damn about international law. I think people will viscerally reject this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk, 0344 499 1000. You're waking up to one of the biggest stories that we've seen under this government, at least, and that is the astonishing revelation that the Prime Minister did not know. We found out yesterday afternoon, that Peter Mandelson had actually failed his security checks for the job of ambassador, but apparently the Prime Minister of our country had no knowledge of this. It was over a year ago, by the way, that the vetting process took place. Doing the media rounds this morning, Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister, so arguably the person that's as close as it gets, Darren Jones, he was in the Treasury, now working at Number 10, says it's astonishing and unacceptable the Foreign Office was able to overrule the vetting process for Lord Mandelson. And Sir Keir Starmer is furious, he says. Yeah, I'm just not buying that line, that they just overrode it, didn't tell him. Why would they not tell him? For what reason? Lammy, I mean, I don't expect anyone to tell David Lammy anything. Wouldn't trust him out the back chopping wood, frankly. But here we are with the Prime Minister of the day and nothing. Tracy says the PM is in France on another jolly today. It's obvious our country is not important enough for Starmer to come to Parliament to make a statement. Bang on, absolutely bang on from Tracy. You should not be in France today. Cancel France, whatever you're doing. Get into the House of Commons. I know they're not ordinarily there on a Friday. This is significant, OK? Because either we have a Prime Minister that is telling, or let's be polite, he's being economical with the truth in saying he didn't know that Mandelson had failed the security checks, or all the people that work for the Prime Minister, Ollie Robbins and others, in those very senior positions, and there would have been a handful of those people, you know, maybe 7 or 8 people, possibly even more, that would have known. They all decided they didn't want to tell the Prime Minister something of such significance. He's going for the ambassador job to the United States, for goodness sake. It's a big gig in the world of politics, on the spectrum of jobs in global politics. UK ambassador to the US is pivotal, particularly under this president. And they didn't want to tell. What, did they not trust Keir Starmer? Did they think that he's not relevant to this enough, that it's more for the Foreign Office people than it is for Number 10? I mean, seriously. So, yes, Parliament should reconvene for a statement from the PM. Keith, who's in the Philippines, very nice, says due process was not followed. The process is that if a candidate fails, he's rejected for progressing to the post. So due process was not followed. Absolutely bang on, because that's been Keir Starmer's line all along. Due process has been followed. No, it wasn't. And I would add to that, part of the due process is surely to inform the Prime Minister. So it wasn't followed. Nigel Farage is going to join us in a little bit to talk about this as well. He's spitting feathers like everybody else is on this. It doesn't matter which party you're from. Everybody is looking at this, jaw firmly glued to the ground, after hearing that he was firstly failed the security check, and then that information wasn't passed on to the PM. Are you buying that? Seriously? Can Keir Starmer survive? 0344 499 1000. Let's just move to some other business as well. We were talking yesterday a lot about the gang rape in Epsom. It's a horrific story of what happened to a young girl last Saturday. But so far we've got nothing about the suspects Nothing about the identity. There's no wanted poster out there as it would have been back in the day. Last night, crowds, we saw it the day before, crowds gathered in the High Street. The riot police showed up for that. Last night, crowds gathered at the church in Epsom where this attack took place by a group of men after protesters had had that previous battle with the police over the refusal to give descriptions of the suspects. And that has rather become an own goal for Surrey police, I sense, because now speculation is out there. If you create a vacuum, people will fill it. Peter Blexley, former Met police detective, is with us. I rather thought, Peter, after some people turned up in the High Street at Epsom and then the riot police sort of almost out of nowhere showed up en masse, that at least yesterday afternoon wouldn't have to be the Chief Constable of Surrey Police, but the head honcho in Epsom would have said, right, I need to get this out there. We need to do a press conference, even if we genuinely don't have any information, because the victim was unable to give it, whatever it happens to be. I need to put this on record and say it. But we've got an eerie silence coming out of Epsom today. Morning, Peter.
Good morning. Yeah, we certainly have. I think what we need to remind ourselves is that this crime is being reported as fact by the BBC and many other news outlets. There is no allegedly, there is no apparently about this crime. And that media reporting is based on what journalists are told by Surrey Police. So we can take it as an unshakable fact that this appalling gang rape took place. Now, if we move on from there, and it is now some days since that attack took place, nobody has been arrested, so the investigation is clearly ongoing. It would make absolute sense for the police to release descriptions of the attackers so that perhaps the public can help identify them and then they can be captured. And also, as a matter of public safety, the public can be warned about the possible, what these people look like, the clothing they wear, so on and so forth. But we're having nothing of it. Yet Surrey Police can turn out in their droves in full riot gear for when a few hundred people turn up to protest because they want to keep women safe.
And in terms of there not being any response from the police, look, we don't live in a country where we have a day-to-day commentary on every crime. This is a particularly brutal, very serious crime. But my sense on this, Peter, is that there's a tipping point with these things. And once you hit that tipping point where there is clear disquiet among the public and the locals, there is the potential for something to kick off. The anger has got to that stage. We were also told after Southport that going forward we will release details of suspects. Would it not be advisable for a police chief somewhere to come out, and even if they have to tell us, look, it's unusual, we literally don't have any descriptions. The victim was unable to supply those descriptions, and that could well be the case. But we need something from the police on this, Peter.
We certainly do. There's a raft of CCTV in Epsom, like there is just about everywhere in the UK. Surely there is CCTV footage of these attackers. But what the police are terrified of is it kicking off in the kind of way that it did after Southport. But actually, what they're doing by staying silent is only making matters worse. The police were issued with new guidelines after Southport about how they should communicate with the media and be more upfront and be more open. They're just trampling all over their own guidelines. They're increasing frustration. They're making people angry, and that is a very bad recipe.
Indeed. Peter, thank you. Peter Blexley, former Met police detective, on that curious silence, that vacuum from Epsom. I'm not a fan of always compelling the police to make an ongoing commentary of crimes, even horrific ones. I understand there's work behind. I don't doubt there's some really diligent cops who are working non-stop to try and establish who the hell is responsible for such a horrendous crime to this young lady. So I get that. We all get that. We understand that. But I think we're now in a point where it's not quite uncharted waters. In fact, that's rather the problem, that we've been here before when we need to know something. And a police officer with a reassuring few minutes press conference, they could even record it on just release it on their X feed and say, look, we're doing our best. We've got some information, but we just haven't got all the information. And here we are 5-6 days later, or 6 days after this attack. And we've not been able to garner a full description of those that we believe could be responsible or help with their inquiries, as they seem to say. Something of that nature is needed, because this will get dangerous if not. 0344 499 1000. We'll take more voice notes from you as well. Keir Starmer is front and centre on what is happening today. More detail coming up on that. Bill in Romsey says no, Keir Starmer will go. No one will go against Keir Starmer because he's told them, if you do, I'll call a general election. Well, there is always that possibility. I wonder whether Starmer's really just lost any credibility among his own ranks now. He'll get May the 7th out the way, local elections, give it a couple of weeks. This is the one that I think could bury him. Let's get a call from Michael in Birmingham. Michael, what have you got for us? Good afternoon. Good morning,
yeah, hiya. Your guy from the Philippines has kind of stolen my thunder a bit. I know a little bit about DV, developed vetting, and no, due process isn't followed. Due process means passing it. This sounds like it's just the appointment of a mate and we'll work out the details later.
Yeah, doesn't it just? Yeah, this is somebody they wanted to give the job to.
Yeah, because look, it doesn't take much to fail these things. I mean, I failed a security test because I'd been in Tanzania for 4 months. Right. And having a drinking holiday, but like, it's obvious that with Mandelson's background, he couldn't pass his cycling proficiency, so it should never have been put forward. And what this tells me is, has Starmer got any integrity? The way that he's so angry about it, this is a procedural point, and many people won't particularly care, but this just shows that he's an unreliable guy. Much as I wanted to keep him because he's a complete incompetent, I think he's got to go. But I just fear who will be next could be even worse.
Well, that is always going to be the problem, because even if you replace, there's not going to be arguably there's not going to be a general election. So 2029, Labour are still there, and it is sort of firmly under that category of be careful what you wish for. Michael, thank you very much indeed. My takeaway from that conversation is that he had a 4-month drinking holiday in Tanzania. Wow. I mean, that's a lot of drinking. I mean, East Africa is a lovely part of the world. 4 months of drinking down there? Yeah, I'd have promoted him, actually, not failed him on his security checks, because he survived it. More comment coming in from you. This from Lee in Rugby. Starmer's goose is properly cooked over this. He either lied repeatedly in the chamber or he's utterly incompetent and should not be in charge of this country. Yeah, it's exactly one of those. His head honchos didn't trust him enough to tell him that kind of information. And there he was, going out into TV studios, explaining that everything was followed. We went through the thing. And if he didn't know, his senior advisors, the most senior civil servant in the Foreign Office, Ollie Robbins, sat there in his living room watching Starmer parading around TV and radio studios, essentially lying, because Ollie had never told him. Oh, actually, Peter failed. I mean, this is think about it. This is massive. It's a massive case on so many levels, but trust and integrity of our Prime Minister is absolutely central to this. Can Keir Starmer survive? Dan Hodges with us later. Nigel Farage, leader of Reform UK, will also join us to give us his take on what has been happening. Our lines are open. Just gone 25 to 8. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning. It is 22:08. You're listening to Ian Collins in the seat for Jeremy Kyle for today and the next week as well. Welcome along. You're very welcome. Loads of calls and comments coming in. 0344 499 1000. Straightforward question. Should Keir Starmer now resign over this horrific, just horrendous lack of judgment, of political antennae, radars, and anything pinging in the wrong direction? I mean, everything about this story is an absolute mess. The Prime Minister either knew or he didn't. Both of those scenarios are damning for him as our leader. The smart money, I think most people say, well, of course he knew. Must have known something. We'll take more calls on that. One other element of government business is that of the North Sea, of course. I mean, this story is not disappearing anytime soon. And the oil is still there. Rachel Reeves has said Britain will step up North Sea oil drilling to combat the energy crisis, triggered, of course, by the war in Iran. The Chancellor said she was looking at faster ways to exploit the basin's oil and gas as quickly as possible, as Labour comes under pressure to stop energy bills from spiralling. She's also said the UK is not facing an immediate shortage of petrol, diesel or jet fuel. There's certainly conflicting views on that. But two of Europe's biggest airlines have cancelled hundreds of flights in response to soaring fuel costs caused by the war in Iran. There's a lot to look into here. Let's speak with Nick Butler, former BP executive. Nick, good morning to you. As somebody who knows the world of oil very well, I mean, you must have been weeping almost on a nightly basis, thinking, the oil's over there, government. It's just over there. We've actually got it. You haven't got to go and find it. There's no fact-finding mission. You haven't got to commission a report or a lengthy inquiry. We know where it is and we know how to get it.
Well, Ian, I'm just pleased that the Chancellor, and I assume therefore the government, are beginning to get a grip on this.
Yeah.
I think we're now at the end of the beginning on the energy problem. I think over the next 2 or 3 weeks you will see a physical shortage of both diesel and jet fuel. As you said, that is beginning to have an impact in other parts of Europe. We're not immune to that. And I think the government is rightly taking the issue to the centre of government. There's always a danger in Whitehall, and I've worked there, of silos, of different departments pursuing their own narrow agenda. I think this is a step in the right direction, but I think there's a lot more to be done on the North Sea. I think Rosebank and Jackdaw should be approved now, and I think exploration should be opened up again. It won't solve the whole immediate problem, but this isn't going to be the last war in the Middle East.
Indeed, and we concentrate on those two, Rosebank, Jackdaw. They're the headlines of this, but as you say, exploration, there are other areas to pursue here. I mean, this is, whether people like or don't like Donald Trump, but that line that he keeps coming out with, there's plenty of it. There's loads. The UK's got so much oil. It's ridiculous. It's on their own doorstep. It's just off the coast. It can be produced, and relatively quickly as well. I mean, it's extraordinary to see a government react in the way it has been, Nick, during an energy crisis. Yes,
I think there are 3 to 4 billion barrels of oil and gas that are proven and could be developed some of it pretty quickly. And then there's another 10 to 12 billion barrels, which people believe is there. It's got to be found and then developed. I agree with your comments. I think the government, at a time like this, the priority is energy security, and they should be doing everything they can to maximize our own available resources. They should be building back some of the refining capacity so that the oil is not exported to Rotterdam and then brought back in the form of petrol and diesel and so on. We need this. We should have a sense of control of our own system, and this one small step is good, but it's not enough yet.
Just let me ask you a kind of standard schoolboy question on this, if you would, Nick. What constitutes a barrel? Because I have this image of that thing that sits on a pirate ship, one of those. Is it just an official measurement of something, or is it literally a barrel?
It was originally literally, physically a barrel. It is a quantity of oil which is now, I don't think, goes in barrels. It goes in pipelines and ships and tankers and so on, and then into your car. But it's a standard measure.
Got it. That clarifies that, because we hear this said every single day, and I'm sure I'm not the only one who scratches my head going, what literally is a barrel? We have it, I suppose. I mean, because this Rachel Reeves can say all she likes, of course, but there's another figure standing in the wings, and that's Ed Miliband. And you mentioned the word oil to him, and you might as well shot his dog. His reaction is absolutely horrific. He's evangelical about this stuff. He wants to cement things up and close things down when it comes to fossil fuels. So there's going to be to get to the stage that Rachel Reeves has alluded to, she's going to have to jump through a few hoops, I would imagine, in cabinet.
Well, you're right, of course. I think the fact that it's now been brought to the centre of government, I think energy security is so important. Most of the time we take it for granted. Now we've realised how important it is to the whole economy. Yeah. And I think that puts power at the centre of government. It's up to her and Number 10. And I think energy policy should be run at the centre by the Cabinet Office on a continuing basis. And I've never been convinced that it needs a separate government department to do net zero. I think energy should be part of the business department. Yep. And then when you have a problem like this, it's up to the centre of government to take control of it.
Well, indeed, and I mean, this takes us into sort of other territory, I suppose, but it is worth mentioning that, we seem to have this situation where I've never seen a government department work so autonomously as Ed Miliband's. It appears that he's been given you go and do your own thing, Ed. He's surrounded by some rather interesting advisors in that department, all of whom sing from a very evangelical anti-fossil fuel sheet. So he's in a big old echo chamber there. He's given a thumping budget to do what he wants to do. He's working with a lot of untested alternatives to energy. I can see him sort of blowing the country's budget on this. And the stupid thing, and stupid is the right word, I'm sure you'd agree, Nick, nobody minds people find, it's good to innovate and find alternative sources of power. We all understand that. There'll be a day when we will need it more. But you don't cut off your nose to spite your face by closing down what you already have. And that seemed to be a very symbolic moment, didn't it, from this government, and particularly Ed Miliband. It was almost a boast and a brag. Look, we're going to fill up the wells. We're going to throw cement into the pits where no one's ever going to get coal or oil ever again. It'll almost be illegal. That was a stupid thing to start with.
I think the real problem is that there's been too little dialogue between government and the industry. The energy industry is what produces and refines and distributes the oil and gas, and they know what can be done. But I think there's been far too little dialogue between that department and the industry, and I hope that will now be corrected, because I think the industry and its skills are what can both mitigate the immediate problem, because they know what they're doing, and deal with the climate change over a longer term period, because they're also on top of the science, which will be the solution. So I hope that there's a positive outcome of these bad circumstances, in that we get a proper energy strategy, which is oil and gas and renewables, but not on a sort of religious, faith-based basis.
Which is what it seems to be, yeah. There is room for a mix, and obviously we encourage innovation and new engineering. Everybody with a brain knows that. It's fantastic. But to go around cementing up oil wells did seem to be, I mean, this is like Colonel Sanders sending foxes into a hen house. It's a rather strange thing for somebody to do. Can you uncement an oil well? Do you know the answer to that, Nick?
I think it would be very difficult, and this is the question now in the North Sea. We're at a point where it's people have lost confidence. They've not been investing. They've not been allowed to explore. There were no exploration wells at all in the North Sea last year, though there are still resources there. Yeah. I think once you've closed it down, and if you go to Aberdeen, you'll see the impact on the business community there, on jobs, on the supply chain through Scotland and the rest of the country. It's very hard to turn it around. I hope it's not too late. The resources are still there. At these prices, they are commercial to develop. We need them, We're going to need them. If we don't develop them, we'll just import the oil.
Yeah.
And that serves no purpose at all. It reduces revenue to the government, it loses jobs, and it makes us more dependent on unstable international markets.
Indeed. Nick, great to have you on, sir. Have a wonderful weekend. Nick Butler, former BP executive, with us on the programme. Thank you to him. Loads of comment coming through on the big story of the day. This from Jason in Southampton says, I really think we're missing, this is reference Starmer, I think we're missing the bigger point with Ollie Robbins, McSweeney and Starmer. If they really aren't communicating with the Prime Minister, who are they communicating with? Who are they making appointments for? Who are they working for? Who is actually running the country? And it was a point that was made by James Price a little earlier. So we know there were some people in the Foreign Office. Ollie Robbins would have been one of those people, but arguably a few others, possibly even some working in Number 10. That would bring, the smart money would say, McSweeney into the equation as well, who knew. But of course, the intelligence services that carried out the vetting, they also would have known. And therefore, over in the States, if you follow natural protocol, the Secret Services there would have known. They'd have been told that, we've done the vetting, because they need to know about the vetting as well, and we've come back with we've hit a no entry sign in the vetting, and you need to know about this because this man could be your ambassador. So that would have left us a little compromise, wouldn't it? Because Starmer carries on in the job. All the while, the American intelligence services have something on Mandelson as a result of the failure, because the job went ahead despite the failure of this. I mean, it's just bonkers and disturbing in equal measure. It would just be laughable. It would be something out of the thick of it on any other day of the week. This is real. This is our government. These are the people who walk among us and run our lives, who make heady decisions about the direction we go in. And this is where we are at. Should Keir Starmer just resign now? More comment coming from you. Let's get a voice note from Wayne. Morning, Wayne.
Morning, Ian. So, Keir Starmer, I mean, the only analogy I can use for him right now is we've all been there. We've had that party, and there's that one guest, a friend of a friend, and the music stopped, you're tidying up, and this one person can't take the hint, can't take the message, and are just still there at the party when everyone's gone, and they are the only one there standing, still thinking that they are engaging and that they are wanted. That is Keir Starmer.
I was sat in the tent and he was showing me through photos of his phone, scrolling through. this was barbaric, horrific stuff. Blokes going through walls in vehicles and then jumping out and shooting everyone. His WhatsApp picture was him with a mask on, with a gun like that.
You're in a tent with this guy.
I'm in a tent with this guy, and actually he's just showing me this stuff. I'm just thinking, this is not the kind of bloke you want to be coming to the UK.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Morning, Ian Collins in for Kyle. He's back next. Well, no, he's back the week after next. Actually, enjoying a couple of weeks off. Lots to come. Some great comments as well. Nigel Farage joins us a little later to respond to Keir Starmer. Dan Hodges, who's been apoplectic on this one, although not surprised. I think Dan will explain more throughout the programme as well. 0344 499 1000. There's been a bit of a battle going on, slightly undignified battle between the White House, Donald Trump, and the Pope. I mean, seriously, who would have thought it? Let's have a listen, firstly, to... I think we can hear from the Pope, can't we? The first clip we've got here is actually Pope Leo talking about his views on current world affairs.
The masters of war pretend not to know that it takes only a moment to destroy. Yet often, a life is often not enough to rebuild. They turn a blind eye to the fact that billions of dollars are spent on killing, on devastation, yet the resources needed for healing, education, and restoration are nowhere to be found.
Still getting used to a Pope with a Chicago accent. Donald Trump doesn't want to meet the Pope. When asked, do you fancy meeting up, having a chat, he said, I don't think we need to do that, because he has said that he simply disagrees with him.
I have nothing against the Pope. His brother's MAGA all the way. I like his brother, Louis. I'm not fighting with him. And if the Pope looked at the 42,000 people that were killed over the last 2 or 3 months as a protester with no weapons, no nothing, I mean, you take a look at that. So I can disagree with the Pope. I have a right to disagree. I have a right to disagree with the Pope. I have no disagreement with the fact the Pope can say what he wants, and I want him to say what he wants, but I can disagree. The Pope has to understand Iran has killed more than 42,000 people over the last few months. Think of it, protesters without guns, without anything. They were totally unarmed protesters. The Pope has to understand that. This is the real world. It's a nasty world.
It's a nasty world. Let's speak with Caroline Farrow, Catholic journalist and commentator. Caroline, good morning to you. We live in a new world, of course. Years ago, people didn't say stuff publicly about what they thought of other senior figures, be they in politics or, in this case, in religion. Is this just a reasonable spat, if you like, between two very senior people in differing positions that have strong views on things? Some would say we should encourage this kind of discourse. Or is it bad for Trump or bad for the Catholic Church?
I certainly think it hasn't shone Trump in the best light, because he sounded very undignified, very angry. He's gone on a tirade, he's called Catholics who've taken offence at his image of himself as Christ, which of course he denies, as being mad leftists. And the thing is, yes, it's true that the Pope Leo XIV is certainly sounding more politically pointed right now. However, I think you also have to remember that he hasn't explicitly mentioned Trump. And his latest comments, which were on X, and of course the ones that you showed, the context of which he is currently visiting Cameroon and the African nations. And Cameroon has a history of sectarian violence and jihadist attacks. So his comments are rather more universal than simply just being about America. But of course, Donald Trump, who I shouldn't say, well, he started it, but launched it into this incredible attack, has taken, Pope Francis's recent very general comments about war, about human dignity as being solely about the Iran conflict. And I think you have to remember that Pope Leo is just doing his job when he speaks about peace or corruption or exploitation or human dignity. I think the only danger comes is if he slips from moral witness, which is what he's supposed to do, into sounding like just another partisan actor. But he doesn't, to be fair to him, he's not explicitly calling out the Republicans or Donald Trump.
Yeah, he's certainly making a wider point. I mean, I thought we can put the picture of Christ to one side. It wasn't Jesus, by the way, that Donald Trump was pretending to be. It was a doctor. Didn't you know, Caroline? That's how a lot of new doctors, they wear that kind of garb these days. It's a new way of dispensing healthcare. But no, I'd be slightly... If somebody came into a ward where I was ill, dressed like that, I would be slightly disturbed. I'd assume the last rites were upon me. But actually, the last point that Trump made in the clip we played, Caroline, was, look, I don't mind him saying anything, but I'm also allowed to disagree. That's fair, isn't it?
Yeah, that's completely fair. But it's just funny, really, that Trump is saying, well, I don't mind. Well, actually, Trump, nobody's asking your permission. Nobody's asking your permission to be able to express a point of view. And Pope Leo, as a spiritual leader of over 1.4 billion Catholics, and also he is head of a very small country, he has every right to speak. So it's amusing to see Trump say, well, I've got no disagreement with him.
Yeah.
He's also rowing back a little bit because his original rhetoric was much stronger.
I thought that, yeah. I thought he'd softened his position on this.
So I think he's obviously realised that he made a tactical error, one that could hit him pretty hard in the midterms. But so long as Pope Leo, which he hasn't, to be fair, so long as Pope Leo doesn't get expressly partisan and starts backing a particular political party or a politician, then he's absolutely fine. But there's this very modern thinking that the church and religious leaders should stick to religion and political leaders should stick to politics, but the two are very much intertwined.
Yes, and of course with social media and all that goes with it, we can't uninvent that. So we are in new, I suppose, debating territory. Caroline, we've got to move for time, but thank you. Nice to have you on with us, Caroline Farrow, Catholic journalist and commentator with us on the programme. It's just a touch after 8 o'clock. Let's get the latest news headlines.
Fancy returning to the front line as Foreign Secretary?
I am going to return. I am going to return. To the people from whence I came.
Hello, I'm Peter Mandelson, and I'm proud to serve as His Majesty's British Ambassador to the United States of America.
I feel a tremendous sense, a profound sense of sympathy for those people, those women who suffered as a result of his behaviour and his illegal criminal activities. And secondly, I regret very, very deeply indeed carrying on that association with him for far longer than I should have done.
The Ambassador has repeatedly expressed his deep regret for his association with him. He's right to do so. I have confidence in him, and he's playing an important role in the UK-US relationship.
Mandy's out 4 decades and 3 scandals, or 3 that we know about. Guess what?
Number 10 knew all about it. They knew that he lived in Jeffrey Epstein's flat.
Mandelson resigned from the Labour Party late last night over the allegation of the $75,000 set of payments to him from Epstein while he was business secretary, $10,000 to his now husband, a photo of him in his pants. This isn't just bad form. There are strong arguments here for him to be facing investigation over misconduct in public office.
I knew of his association with Epstein, but had I known then what I know now, I'd have never appointed him.
Breaking news that Lord Mandelson, Peter Mandelson, has now been arrested. So Mandy and Andy have now both had their collars felt. This is the establishment, the British establishment on trial. Came to us around about 5 o'clock when we learned that we saw footage of Peter Mandelson being led out of his London home in very exclusive Regent's Park by 3 coppers.
Now we have all these allegations, we have all the documentation related to those allegations, which Downing Street is being forced to put out. The first tranche of it will be early next month.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
We had no idea, and good morning, by the way. Welcome along. It's Ian Collins in for... I was about to say in for Keir Starmer, in for Jeremy Kyle. That's the next part of the journey, of course. Ian Collins in for Jezza. He's back in just over a week's time here on Breakfast. But we had no idea, of course, this time yesterday there was going to be such an explosive story coming out of Number 10, the Foreign Office, and Westminster collectively. Who would have thought that Peter Mandelson would be leading the headlines? The Prince of Darkness is back in the news. Turns out they knew all along this man was not fit for purpose, but they persisted anyway. This is a mess, and whatever way you slice it, the Prime Minister is up to his neck in it.
There was then, I should add, security vetting carried out independently by the security services, which is an intensive exercise that gave him clearance for the role, and you have to go through that before you take up the post.
Well, it didn't give him clearance for the role, as it turns out. It wasn't fit for purpose. Can Keir Starmer survive this? I mean, it's inconceivable. He could not have known. It's either that or this man is running a government where his most senior advisers decided not to tell him. In what world would you not inform the Prime Minister that a senior figure had failed the security checks for a senior job? If the PM doesn't have the confidence from his own team, then surely his number is up, whatever way you slice it. And we're also continuing to take your comments and thoughts on Epsom. Still no information from Surrey Police. It's now nearly 8:10 on a Friday morning, almost a week after this horrific attack. When a story gathers this much momentum and the locals are gathering in the streets asking for answers, you might imagine the police chief would make a statement. There is still a haunting silence coming out of Epsom. We'll have more on that, and your comments welcome as well. 0344 499 1000. Welcome to Talk Breakfast. Let's get a voice note on Keir Starmer. This comes from Alan. Morning, Alan.
Morning, Ian. Big Al from Swansea. Oh, every day, buddy, I get up and they, not again. It's just catastrophic, this weasel number 10. At the end of the day, right, he's a chief executive of a massive corporation, this great country, right? If he worked in any other business like Tesco or whatever, he'd be sacked. You oversee everything. Get your ministers every day, right? What are you doing? What are you doing? Right? What's going on? I'm overseeing everything. I'm not happy. I sort it. You can't say, I didn't know about it. It didn't come across my desk. And chucking people on the buses all the time. Oh, it was his fault. It was his fault. Unbelievable. Take some accountability. He's either stupid or he's an absolute liar. Either way, unacceptable. Get out and let someone who knows what they're doing. But as for the rest of the Labour Party, they're just a bunch of clowns. It's like an absolute circus has come to town 2 years ago, destroying my great country. Keep up the great show, buddy. Shut up.
Big Al, great stuff. Bunch of clowns. I wonder where he was going with that for a fleeting moment. We're going to speak to Annabel Denham in just a second. Let's first hear from the Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister. He's arguably the man who's the closest to the PM at number 10, Darren Jones. Here's what he said just moments ago.
He's furious with the state. I mean, this is a failing of the state. It is a security failing. It is utterly unacceptable, not just in the individual case of Peter Mandelson and respect of the Prime Minister's fury at the Foreign Office for not having told him this information, but the very fact that the processes were in place that allow for that to happen in the first place. That's why, in my role in the Cabinet Office, immediately last night, I suspended the rights for these organisations to make these judgments. I've asked for an urgent review about what decisions these organisations have taken in the past to overrule the recommendations from UK security vetting. And I was due to announce a broader independent review of the vetting process anyway, and this will now be part of that.
Well, he's furious with the Foreign Office. The Foreign Office is apparently furious now with number 10. My goodness. Is someone going to take responsibility for this? Maybe the Prime Minister himself? He didn't know. Nigel Farage joins us in about half an hour. First, Annabel Denham, senior political commentator over there at The Telegraph. Annabel, good morning to you. I mean, we've seen some rather bizarre elements and facets to this labyrinthine story of Peter Mandelson. It was already still ongoing, and then suddenly this pops up yesterday. I mean, this is damning for the Prime Minister, whatever way you slice it.
Yes, that's right. Now, we knew that the Mandelson saga was going to drag on for some time, that there would be further releases of the so-called Peter Papers. What we were not expecting was this explosive revelation yesterday afternoon that the Foreign Office had overruled security vetting clearance in order that Peter Mandelson could assume the role of US ambassador. And it's believed that they did so in order to spare Keir Starmer's blushes, because the Prime Minister had already announced that Mandelson would be his man in Washington. Well, if they were trying to spare him humiliation, then they've not done so for a very long time. It was more of a stay of execution. And now, as you've said, the Prime Minister's position just looks untenable. A big problem facing Keir Starmer is that he has long considered himself and presented himself as a paragon of moral probity. He has always presented himself as a man of integrity, a decent man, somebody who adheres to the rules. And no one has demanded the resignation of other ministers with such alacrity if they have breached the ministerial code than Keir Starmer. You know, he led the calls for Nicola Sturgeon to resign if she'd been found guilty of giving an inaccurate account of her meeting with Alex Salmond to MSPs. You know, the following year, he repeatedly accused Boris Johnson of misleading Parliament over his knowledge and involvement in the Downing Street parties. He also said he expected Suella Braverman to resign in 2023 over a possible breach of the ministerial code. Yeah. So there's a pattern there. And you just wonder how on earth the Prime Minister believes that he can cling on. Now, yes, he's used Ollie Robbins, the Perm Sec at the Foreign Office, as his human shield this time, but he's running out of people to hide behind.
It does seem extraordinary that he wouldn't have known. I mean, the order of events of how these things work is not familiar territory to most of us. So he was given the job and then they did the security checks. Maybe that is just how it ordinarily works. They didn't say you've got the job pending security checks, but if anybody needed security checking, I would argue objectively, I would say it would be Peter Mandelson. You know, we know he's had his poker in all sorts of fires over the years, to coin a phrase, whether that's, you know, his job in the EU as a commissioner. He's known to have friends in all sorts of interesting places, whether it's Russia, China, and of course, more poignantly and more disturbingly, that of Jeffrey Epstein. Now, that information was already known. It did come up on the security check. Clearly, it wasn't that bit that he failed on, one would assume, because Starmer had told the House of Commons that he was aware of the Epstein connection being raised. Now, if that was the point where Ollie Robbins and others decided, oh, we won't tell him, yeah, he failed that bit, he went through that bit, but we're not going to tell him he failed it. I mean, if that is the case, there's either a group of very inept senior people like Ollie and others in the Foreign Office who don't trust the Prime Minister enough with that information, or they did tell him and the Prime Minister is lying to us. I mean, it's extraordinary the PM did not know about this when appointing a man into such a senior position, Annabel.
Well, it does seem inconceivable. To your question over how common it is that the announcement is made before an individual has gone through security vetting, it does happen. It's unusual and it carries certain political risks, which brings us back to your point of what did they know and when?
Yeah.
And, unfortunately, we don't have certainty of Ollie Robbins has fallen on his sword or been sacked. Because he was the person who decided to overrule the vetting service. We don't know if he did that what motivated him to do it. We don't even know which particular controversy meant that Mandelson failed in his vetting, and I suspect that we never will. So part of the problem is, often it's the cover-up, not the crime, that brings politicians down, and they're covering up so much now that the public are going to struggle to trust a word that they come out and say. And to Darren Jones's comments this morning, we've already had the Labour government laying into the security services for their supposed failures in this appointment. But what does that say to our enemies, particularly if it's not even true, if they are using that as a way to hide from their own failures? It's quite something that they're blaming the intelligence services. What message do they think that they are projecting to the world about our security and our competence in keeping British citizens safe, and not least ensuring that we appoint the right person into the most coveted, important diplomatic role that exists?
Yeah.
So, it's going to be an extremely difficult time for Keir Starmer. He, of course, is going to Paris today for discussions about how we reopen the Strait of Hormuz. But so once again, it's sort of never hear Keir, and he's going to be leaving his senior staffers to sort of deal with this fallout. But at some point, the Prime Minister is going to need to give a statement to the public explaining exactly what has happened here. And he's going to need to be contrite. Let's not forget how long it took him to actually apologise for the mistakes that were made even up until this controversy exploded in all of our inboxes yesterday afternoon.
Well, he's over there in France, apparently to help open the Straits of Hormuz, which just sounds ridiculous that he's going to do that. But the straits between Number 10 and the Foreign Office is the other one that needs opening, because it seems there's a right royal row now going on. Neither trust each other. I mean, this is an absolute mess, whatever way you slice it. And, of course, the other point, Annabelle, is that what we do know is that Keir Starmer knew about it this week. He says, these are his words, knew about it this week. So we can say probably on Monday he knew about it. Why did he not address the House of Commons as a matter of urgency to clarify what he knew?
I believe that he's now come out and said that he knew on Tuesday that that's what Number 10 are disclosing. It's possible that he simply didn't want the scrutiny of the House of Commons. He can't possibly have believed that this wouldn't leak. I wonder whether he was concerned about facing Kemi Badenoch at PM's Qs. I mean, as it happens, he already had a pretty bruising 30 minutes on Wednesday lunchtime anyway, but it's just going to feed this idea that he's not being totally honest and open with the British public over what happened with this appointment. It was just such a catastrophic mistake. And the fact that he's come out and said that he wasn't aware, and Number 10 wasn't aware, and we were told that Morgan Sweeney wasn't aware, and Peter Mandelson apparently wasn't aware. We don't know if Ollie Robbins was aware. You just wonder how this government is operating. It seems to have completely failed in some of its most basic functions.
Well, indeed. I mean,
it sounds completely dysfunctional, doesn't it?
Yeah, the best that Keir Starmer can hope for, really, is the accusation of heady ineptitude. But at worst, it goes to more nefarious and disturbing territory, like whether he misled Parliament, whether he did actually know. There's a lot of questions there. And, of course, it ultimately comes down to one more poignant point of discussion, Annabelle, and that is whether Keir Starmer can survive this.
I struggle to see how he can survive this. Now, you know, just a week ago, I think, just yesterday, in fact, yesterday morning, there was a sort of consensus in Westminster that Keir Starmer would limp on past May, that he'd had quite a good war with the Iran conflict, that Labour challengers and plotters were concerned that it might seem reckless and irresponsible and opportunistic for them to strike whilst the conflict was ongoing. We know that there's that gap between the results of the May elections and Parliament returning, so MPs will be in their constituencies where it's more difficult for them to try to plot some sort of coup, and therefore it looked like he would survive at least for a few months, possibly into 2027. But now, speaking to members of the Labour Party, the backbenchers, they are in meltdown. Their jaws have just dropped to the floor. They cannot believe this latest development. And yes, you know, Keir Starmer will take Labour into the May elections, but after that, it's very difficult to see how he survives. Those are going to be really bruising, damaging results for the Labour Party.
Yeah, but on the plus side, Ed Miliband then becomes our Prime Minister, perhaps. So, you know, you can go into the weekend with that thought in your mind, Annabelle. Lovely to have you on with us. Thank you, Annabelle Denham. She is, of course, senior political commentator over there at The Telegraph. Thank you to her. Let's cross over to College Green. Alex Burghardt, MP, Shadow Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, is with us. Alex, good morning to you.
Morning. Thanks for having me on.
It's a pleasure. Nice to have you with us. Of course, this time yesterday we didn't know anything about this. Peter Mandelson, the explosion of news overnight, incredibly damning for the Foreign Office, incredibly damning for Ollie Robbins, who was the head honcho at the Foreign Office. He's now been booted out, but absolutely critical for the Prime Minister.
Yeah, look, it's very hard to believe a word that the government says. It's very hard to believe a word the Prime Minister says. The truth is, the Prime Minister made this appointment. He wanted Peter Mandelson. He pushed the system to go faster and get it done, and he must take responsibility for it. He put the wrong man in a very important job in a way that, at its worst, could have been dangerous for our national security. This is on him, and he won't take responsibility.
He says, of course, he didn't know. That's the defence. He had no idea until this week. What do you make of that, Alex Burghardt?
So I'll say a number of things about that. I find it very difficult to believe that when these concerns were raised by the security forces, that nobody said anything to any minister. I just can't believe that somebody didn't sort of take the Foreign Secretary aside and say, "Sir, we have a problem." I can't believe that somebody didn't go to number 10 and talk to the senior people there and say, "We have a problem." It beggars belief. But let's imagine that did happen. Let's imagine that this was just sort of kept deep down in the bowels of the Foreign Office and nobody else knew about it.
Yeah.
The Prime Minister was told on Tuesday night that this had happened. He did not come to the House of Commons on Wednesday to correct the record. He did not come to the House of Commons on Thursday to correct the record. It was only when The Guardian broke the story that number 10 admitted that it had happened. And that means that there were 2 days when he had knowingly misled the House. I'm afraid he has broken the rules of Parliament, and we all know what the consequences for that are.
I'm sure he will have a slightly different slant on this story. He's not going to say anything today because he's legging it to France, so we know that much, Alex. So I guess we're going to have to wait for next week, during which time there may be other revelations come out over this.
Well, that's spot on, because Mr. Robbins, the senior civil servant in the Foreign Office, who's just been kicked out, I'm sure he has a side of the story. I'm sure his friends and his colleagues have a side of the story. Let's see what they have to say. But most importantly, let's see what Labour MPs and Labour people have to say. Yeah, the leader of Scottish Labour, the last time these revelations came out, called for the Prime Minister to go. We know that in private, Labour MPs and some Labour ministers are calling for the Prime Minister to go. Let's just see where that goes. But look, this has all come about because of effective opposition, by the tough questioning that Kemi Badenoch put down against the Prime Minister, by the humble address, the motion that myself and Kemi put down a few months ago that has forced the government to publish documents, and by some very good investigative journalism. And, We've seen the ambassador to Washington go. We've seen the Downing Street chief of staff go. We've seen the Downing Street head of comms go.
Yeah.
We've seen the cabinet secretary go, and now the senior mandarin in the Foreign Office. The more you pull on this thread, the more comes out, the more people go, and it ends with the Prime Minister.
It's been pretty grim, but of course, if that were to come to fruition, and quite literally the Prime Minister were to resign, let's say on the other side of May 7th elections, Alex, you could be faced looking opposite Prime Minister Ed Miliband. How does that grip you when it comes to your parliamentary enthusiasm?
It will not surprise you to hear that the thought of any Labour Prime Minister does not fill me with excitement or joy. And but look, the true thing, the principle here, is that if you behave in a certain way, you're not allowed to be Prime Minister. And so, you know, the Labour Party needs to go through this process. Parliament needs to go through this process. But as I say, I don't believe that Keir Starmer deserves to be Prime Minister anymore. We have to deal with that, and then we'll see what happens next.
All right, Alex, thank you for your time. We'll let you get back to it. Alex Burghardt, MP, Shadow Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster. I'm not absolutely sure whether that was a microphone issue or whether there was somebody doing some some welding work apparently going on. What were they welding? His shoes? Goodness me, very close. We got through it anyway. Thank you to Alex. Let's get a voice note on Keir Starmer from Judith.
Hello, it's Judy from Altops, West Yorkshire. I don't think Starmer will resign, to be honest with you. I think he'll cling on by his fingernails because he feels he has a right to be Prime Minister. And the backbench MPs won't get rid of him because all he has to say to them is, if you make me resign, I will go to the King and call a general election. And that'll shut all them up because they know full well they'll lose the jobs and all the perks that goes with it. So I'm of the opinion that he won't resign. Thank you.
Crown is facing its gravest test in decades, and the royal tea from Talk is your front row seat. With royal reputations under pressure and probing questions about public trust, we unpack every twist and revelation with the biggest names in the business. From the throne room at Buckingham Palace to a mansion in Montecito, we follow every royal ripple. Never miss a moment of The Crown in crisis. Subscribe to the Royal Tea from Talk on the app or wherever you get your podcasts.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Just coming up to 8:30. This comes in from Damon in Wigan, who says, if I failed my vetting, I would not get the job. End of. Why do the elite think the rules do not apply to them? Starmer has to take responsibility and go. Thank you. Thank you. We're going to talk to Tony in West Sussex in a few moments' time. Let's speak with the leader of Reform UK. Nigel Farage is with us. Nigel, good morning to you.
Good morning.
What a day. I mean, who would have thought it? There we were yesterday, 24 hours ago. There's always some rumblings going on in government, but nobody expected this explosion. It's absolutely huge. It's pivotal for this government. And, of course, Keir Starmer. Your reaction, Nigel?
I do not believe a single word the government are saying, whether it's Darren Jones going out on media to defend him. None of this hangs out. So what they're saying is they were not told that Mandelson had cleared security, had gone through security vetting and been rejected. Yet the Prime Minister, in a big speech in Hastings, said very clearly that Mandelson had passed. He said in the House of Commons that the vetting had revealed an ongoing relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, but not the extent of it. So you've got the Prime Minister publicly saying that the vetting had been done and that he knew about it, and now claiming he didn't know about it, and he didn't know there'd been a rejection. That doesn't add up. And, you know, on Tuesday, we now learn, or their excuse is that on Tuesday they were told about this. Well, if that's the case, why did he not, on Wednesday, tell the truth to the House of Commons? It's evasion, and I firmly believe, and I really do, that the Prime Minister has not only misled Parliament, but openly lied to the country and thought he would get away with it.
Has he lied to Parliament, Nigel? Because I noticed he was very careful, wasn't he, in terms of what he said inside Parliament as distinct for things he said at number 10. And there's a crucial difference, of course, between those two locations.
Yes. Well, what was said in Parliament, of course, was read word for word of a script that had been, because he can't really do anything without a script, of course. And it was, so it was very carefully done. But I still believe, I do believe that he misled Parliament. And I am certain that he lied to the country.
I mean, this is as serious as it gets for a Prime Minister, of course, and even if you took Starmer's position on this, which is that he didn't know, I mean, that is also pretty damning stuff for his integrity and his entire position of authority. I mean, that's equally as damning.
Yeah, I mean, it's damning either way. I mean, you know, I suppose the best defence the Prime Minister could have is one of sheer incompetence. Yeah. And that's about as good as it gets. But it's not believable. Because otherwise, how could he have told people about the vetting process, about the one slight difficulty that had occurred, but make it clear that clearance had been given? He's not telling the truth. Yeah. And it's the classic old Dennis Healey saying from the 70s: when in a hole, stop digging. Yeah. And I remember years ago, Ronnie Reagan as president lied to the American people. It was to do with the Iran-Contra affair. Mm-hmm. And he lied to the American people. He was caught out, and he went live on TV and said, "My fellow Americans, I've sinned. I've lied to you. I'm sorry. I'm human. I fail, as we all do. Please forgive me." And they did. Yeah. The difference here is that these lies and evasions and half-truths have gone on for far too long. It's even if Starmer addressed the nation tonight and said, "I'm sorry," I don't believe he now can be forgiven. So the tipping point has been kind of reached. I was going to say, normally when, I mean, you mentioned the Healey thing, you know, stop digging. Starmer's reaction to a problem is to jump on an aeroplane and go to another country, which is exactly what he's going to do today, because he's off solving Middle East problems, Nigel, in France. Yes, problems he has nothing to do with whatsoever. Yeah. What'll happen, he'll come to the Commons on Monday. There'll be a statement that's read word for word. Mm-hmm. There'll be questions from all around the House. He will announce an investigation, a deep, full investigation with a King's Counsel in charge, and we'll get to the bottom of this and what happened, and that'll be his way of staving off resignation. Other parties might try to put a motion of confidence down, but it isn't going to pass. And do you know how we get rid of him? I'll tell you. On May the 7th, Reform are going to smash the Labour Party in its heartlands of the North East, the North West, South Wales, parts of Scotland. And funny enough, our campaign slogan is vote Reform, get Starmer out. A crushing humiliation for the Prime Minister and the Labour Party in parts of the country they've held for over 100 years will be the end.
Do you sense, just a final point, Nigel, in terms of the civil service, I mean, if we take this story as we are being fed, that the Foreign Office, the mandarins at the Foreign Office, Ollie Robbins, a handful of others perhaps, maybe McSweeney in Downing, does it show the civil service has too much power? If you can withhold information of that level of importance from a Prime Minister, then one has to say the civil service itself needs to be investigated.
Even Sir Humphrey would not have dared, in Yes Prime Minister, to withhold something as important as this. Yes, of course, they've got enormous power. But if Ollie Robbins did not pass on to number 10 the problems of their failings when it came to appointing a man to be ambassador to the most important, most powerful country in the world and our most important ally, frankly, I think he would have left himself wide open to potential criminal prosecution. I disagree with so much of what Ollie Robbins has done in his career. I do not believe he's an idiot.
And in terms of where the story goes next, people talking about Keir Starmer resigning, Nigel, he's going no. You mentioned May the 7th elections. Of course, I should point out, just for the Ofcom fans, that all parties are standing in all of those elections all over the country. You can find candidates' details. And, of course, we will reflect those views throughout the course of the coming week. So there's that bit done, bit of housekeeping. But in terms of Starmer, he's not going to go before the May elections. Is it now a surefire bet that after May the 7th, within weeks, Keir Starmer will walk that plank?
I do not believe he will make Midsummer's Day.
I mean, profound stuff. The question, of course, that all other parties are asking, though, is who replaces him? Would that be an open goal for you guys if Ed Miliband got the big gig, Angela Rayner got the gig? Because there are left-wingers out there that kind of clamour and gravitate to these names, curious as it might sound to other parties.
Well, the Labour Party have a massive problem in that the Green vote, the hard left vote, the Corbynite vote is going to hurt them in London, in parts of Manchester, in parts of Birmingham. But in the old traditional areas, the former mining communities, etc., Reform, I think, are going to have them for breakfast on the 7th of May. And so what does the party do? Does it become a more patriotic party in favour of, small business and hard-working people? Or does it go down the route of going further left and taking on the Greens? And my view is they will definitely go left, and to go with Rayner or Miliband, who are the two most likely, would be a big, big shift to the left, and it would further isolate the Labour Party from its old, what we used to call working class traditional base. And we're almost at we're not far away from being at a moment. Given that Unite, the union, and we've been talking to them, are looking at disassociating from the Labour Party, we may be at a moment when this Labour movement, which, has been so strong ever since the end of the First World War, this actually could be an existential moment for the whole Labour movement.
Indeed. Just a very final point, Nigel. Donald Trump has made a lot of comments about the special relationship, or the lack of the special relationship. The Churchill comments back weeks ago in the Oval Office. He's then talked about Starmer's inability to assist and step up to the plate and make decisions. Is this latest instalment of what goes on in number 10 likely to compound that? Do you think Mr. Trump, the president, will be viewing the UK now as a security risk because of the Mandelson affair? I can imagine him commenting on this at some point over the next few days.
We sent to America an ambassador who had failed vetting, had failed security clearance. We are not yet being told the reasons why, but I think I can have a guess about a very large communist government on the other side of the world and that relationship. I think this will be the Americans, when they wake up to this, are going to be absolutely livid.
Nigel, great to speak again. Thank you, Nigel Farage, leader of Reform UK, with us on the programme. Thank you to him. And again, just to mention, Nigel doing his own bit of electioneering there. Other parties are standing. In fact, all major parties will be standing, whether it's Wales, whether it's Scotland, local elections, mayorals as well. Check out your local candidates for full details. And, of course, over the coming weeks, we're also reflecting views from other candidates too. Thank you to Nigel. Back to you shortly. 0344 499 1000.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Morning, 22:09. It's Ian in for Jeremy Kyle. Jeremy's back just over a week's time, a week on Monday. Lots to get through this morning. Big news day, of course. I mean, who would have thought this thing would have come around the corner like a flipping hurricane in the last 24 hours? Yet again, it's Keir Starmer in the dock, it seems. In other news, Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, said he would support cutting benefits to boost funding to the armed forces. This is despite Keir Starmer's refusal to do the same a day earlier. So there's mixed messages coming out of there. They're all on manoeuvres at Labour HQ. Arguing, Wes Streeting was that expenditure has got to come from somewhere. Is the first cabinet minister to openly favour cutting the benefit budget, which, by the way, is £334 billion. I think that's more money than we actually take, just one department, to fund the military. Let's get to work with Mark Francois, MP, Conservative MP and Shadow Defence Minister. Good to see you again, Mark. Thanks for being with us. Just before we get into Wes Streeting, I mean, I'd be failing not to get a word on the extraordinary development in the Peter Mandelson saga, as if it couldn't get any stranger or weirder. If you put this in a Netflix show, people would say that would never happen. And here we are, a man who failed a security check was deemed OK by our Prime Minister to go off and be the ambassador in America.
Well, look, I think Starmer's fate now rests in the hands of Labour backbenchers. He told Parliament that full due process had been followed. The inference of that clearly is that Mandelson had been looked at and been cleared. He told some of your media colleagues just a few weeks ago that Mandelson had been through a vetting process. He never mentioned that had raised a flag. So I think his position is untenable. The only thing that's propping him up is that we are less than 3 weeks from national and local elections. Look, if you're a Labour MP, you've been out canvassing over the Easter recess, you've had your ears bent over tax rises, over rising energy costs on people's fuel bills, over the rising cost of petrol, over the Chagos chaos, over the fact they're doing in our Northern Ireland veterans. You know, if you've seen Labour MPs, they've come back from that recess not refreshed, but pretty grumpy, and now this.
Yeah.
So if the pundits are right, and Labour have a disastrous night on the 7th of May, let's see, but if they lose Wales for the first time in 100 years, if they do poorly in Scotland, if they get hammered in the English local elections, now they very kindly deign to allow us to have some, I think the Prime Minister is going to be in an incredibly difficult position, and you could well see a scenario where Labour backbenchers, you know, the herd panics, the herd stampedes, and they move against him. And what Wes Streeting's been saying about defence is clearly positioning for a future leadership.
100%. I mean, it's extraordinary that this is it's not even a tacit departure from what the Prime Minister had said. It completely goes against what the Prime Minister said. Now, you don't do that on any ordinary day of the week. You do that because you're on manoeuvres, right?
Correct. And, you know, look, they're all at it. You know, Angela is you know, flat out campaigning. So is Miliband. He seems to be incredibly the favourite of Labour members. Yep. Even Al Khan's is going to throw his hat into the ring. So this is Streeting positioning himself. I might send Wes a Tory party application form because he's just basically parroted our policy. We said recently that we would not go ahead with the 2-child benefit cap. We would reverse it. That saves you about £3.2 billion in a full year. We'd use half of that for debt reduction. The other £1.6 billion we would use for boosting the armed forces, including growing the size of both the regular and the reserve component of the British Army. So, you know, thanks, Wes. If, you know, I've known him for years. I know him through some mutual friends. He could come round, you know, we'll have a glass of wine and a chit-chat, and I'll just slide the form across the desk. Yeah. Very accommodating.
Well, he may well sign it, Mark. You never know.
Well, we'll make it as painless as possible.
Are you... Are you... yeah, I'd love to be a fly on the wall and a glass of wine in hand for that. I mean, in terms of the Conservatives, are you going to hold on to this like a dog with a bone, this Starmer stuff? Because this is... I mean, we can laugh at it, we can talk about ineptitude, and we can, you know, throw some cheap gags at the Prime Minister. Oh, he's a bit rubbish, didn't even know that his, you know, ambassador had failed as security. But underpinning all of this is a really serious issue. It's about integrity, it's about trust, it's about the power of the civil service. If you take Starmer at his words that they're that powerful, they don't even have to tell the Prime Minister that somebody in such a position, an influential position like an ambassador to the States, failed security. They don't have to tell the Prime Minister. So everything about this is a mess. Are you looking for a scalp here, Mark Francois? Do you need him to resign? I think more
importantly, the question is, are Labour backbenchers looking for a scalp?
Yeah.
Because realistically, his fate lies in their hands. Look, he loses either way. Are we really supposed to believe that after putting forward Mandelson, an immensely controversial appointment, somebody who had to resign from the British Cabinet, not once, but twice, for malfeasance, when they conducted a security vetting exercise on him, and he failed it for reasons we don't yet know, but Nigel's suggestion is interesting. Anyway, he failed it, that nobody told the Prime Minister that he genuinely didn't know. I mean, are we honestly expected to believe that? Do they think the British public's heads all button up at the back?
So do you think the Prime Minister lied to Parliament then, Mark?
Well, he said a full due process was followed. The inference of that, anyone listening to that would reasonably assume that he meant that they went through a process and the process was fine. I mean, you know, in pub English, You would have thought that's what he said. But
yes.
Let's look at the... and he's thrown Ollie Robbins under a bus. There's a pattern of behaviour here. He threw his first Chief of Staff, Sue Gray, under a bus. He threw his second Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney, the man who urged him to appoint Mandelson and then conveniently lost his phone. He threw McSweeney under a bus. Now he's thrown Ollie Robbins under a bus.
Yeah.
He threw Rachel from Accounts under a bus if he thought that would save his skin. I'm not sure it will. So the other possibility is that he didn't know, which I find incredible. But if he really didn't know, what's he doing as Prime Minister? He's supposed to be in charge.
Correct.
He's supposed to be running the country. Can we really be expected to believe that they put Mandelson through this process and at no point did he ever say, by the way, did the vetting go all right?
Yeah.
I mean, it just...
It doesn't stand up to, the scaffolding of that argument is so weak. It's extraordinary. Mark, listen, I've got to stop there. Great to have you on with us as ever. Mark Francois, MP, Conservative and Shadow Defence Minister, with us on the programme. Thank you to him. A lot of comments about Starmer coming through. Should he just go? If he does, would it be right now after the May elections? And what are your thoughts on who could replace him? I tell you what, if we had Ed Miliband as Prime Minister, I can't tell you, from a journalistic broadcaster point of view, how delicious that would be. I mean, I'm excited about the idea. The butterflies in the tummy already. Bring it on, because Labour aren't going anywhere as a government, but as a leader. Is it now all but inevitable that Starmer walks the plank? 0344 499 1000. Let's get a voice note on Starmer. Here's Andy. Morning, Andy.
Morning, Ian. Andy from Birmingham. Great show again, mate. Wow, how long has this bloke got to hang on? He's going off to France this morning in a jet, hopefully for the last time. I'd like that jet to come back empty. But seriously, though, what the hell is he doing this morning? He should be marched from Downing Street all the way to the Commons to make a statement. No cars, he should be marched through the street all the way to make a statement. He's lying. The people around him are lying.
Conflict breaks out anywhere in the world, it has consequences here at home. Talk War is your definitive national security briefing. From the conflict in Ukraine to the tensions in Gaza and the latest escalation with Iran, this is where you'll find comprehensive comment and expert analysis with multiple updates throughout the day. The Talk War podcast from Talk, available on the Talk app or wherever you get your podcasts. across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Morning. Just gone, or is it just nearly? It's nearly 5 to 9, right here on The Breakfast Show, here on Talk. Loads to come. Alex Phillips is here at 10 this morning. Looking forward to that. We'll chat to her beforehand too. This one in from Steve in Yorkshire, who says, morning Ian, love the show. Civil service needs overhauling. It's corrupt. It apparently makes important decisions without telling the government. I mean, if you took this story as it's been told to us, Steve's bang on. That's exactly what's happened. Here's the guy. Your ambassador to America has failed a security test, the security checks, and we're not going to tell the Prime Minister. But wow. And they sat around and watched Starmer appear on TV and radio programmes left, right and centre, talking about how, yeah, we've done all the security checks. And they knew that Mandelson had failed, and they didn't tell the Prime Minister. Let's meet with Anne Widdecombe, former Home Office Minister, of course. Anne, good morning to you. I mean, a lot of extraordinary things happen in government. They're frustrating, and whether you're a minister, whether you're in the civil service, whatever, you know, it's never a straight road. Every day is a new day of challenges and sometimes insurmountable policies, and goodness knows what's standing in the way. But this takes it to another level. What has happened here is almost beyond belief.
Well, what the Prime Minister claims has happened here is beyond belief, because he claims he didn't know. Now, I mean, I know from government how this works. There would have been a paper trail. It will be very easy to ascertain who knew and who knew what when. There will be a paper trail. The head of the Foreign Office would certainly have known. It is likely, in fact, it's almost certain that the Cabinet Secretary would have known. And you're asking me to believe that that information was not passed on to the Prime Minister. Now, I find that, I mean, OK, you know, maybe something so extraordinary happened that he's telling us the truth and he didn't know, but I can't see it because I just know how things work, and that something of that order of magnitude would get pushed up the line.
Absolutely. And it's damning whichever way, because as you rightly say, I mean, I'm tempted to say somebody would have to be stupid to think the Prime Minister didn't know. But let's take him at his word, because the alternative is almost as bad, isn't it?
The alternative's worse. The alternative's actually worse, because it would mean that the whole system of government had failed, and failed at the highest level. If it really is true that he didn't know, then that is actually worse than that he did know but didn't touch. The second is deceitful, it is wrong, but it comes down just to one man. But if the system has failed on that level, that's actually it's pretty catastrophic. I mean, what's going on?
Yeah, indeed. This, of course, will mean, and we're understanding and learning this morning, a lot of the headlines, Keir Starmer's own ministers are turning on him. We know that West Streeting is on manoeuvres. Ed Miliband would love the job. Angela Rayner would quite like a crack at it as well. And, of course, Andy Burnham, still the Mayor of Greater Manchester, but, you know, his name would firmly be in the hat, although he's got a bit of a quirky journey to take before he can be. Something's going to happen, isn't it? There's going to be a point, arguably after May the 7th, that this is going to come to some sort of fruition.
I think after May the 7th, it will be crunch time for the Labour Party. I think they'll do extremely badly. They deserve to do badly on May the 7th. And it will then be crunch time for them. But I'm going to say, Ian, what I've said before, and you've heard me say before, be careful what you wish for. Because Miliband, I mean, I understand as a journalist it would be great fun, but for heaven's sake, not for the country. Miliband's dangerous, Rayner's dangerous, Wes Streeting doesn't have that much of a chance, I would think. Burnham's not even in Parliament. Just be careful what you wish for.
Yeah. What is the most helpful, from another party's point of view, who is it most helpful to get the top job should Starmer go?
Well, I mean, you know, just as a journalist, you say, you know, you eagerly anticipate Ed Miliband.
Yeah.
I mean, for any opposition party, the worse the person is, the better.
Yeah.
You know, because you can make capital out of it. But for heaven's sake, you know, there's a country that's got to be run for another 3 years. We're in a serious economic mess.
Yeah.
We're not defended. I mean, I won't go on listing all the things that are wrong. You know all those. You need somebody with real grit, determination, and who is not dangerous, who's mainstream and straightforward. That is what you need, and you ain't going to get that from any of the current candidates in the Labour Party.
But it will be glorious to watch. Listen, Anne, thank you. As ever, Anne Widdecombe, former Home Office Minister, now Reform UK member. Thank you to her. And as we talk about elections and May the 7th, again, I will remind you that all major parties and some small parties are standing in many, if not most, of those seats, whether it's the Welsh Senate elections, whether it's the Scottish parliamentary elections, mayoral, local councils, you name it. You can check your local listings for full candidate details if there's an election taking place anywhere near you. More from you. Dan Hodges is going to join us. He's written some damning stuff on this whole Starmer affair. It's all coming up after the news at 9 here on Talk.
Over the past 36 hours, the United States and its partners have launched Operation Epic Fury, one of the largest, most complex, most overwhelming military offensives the world has ever seen. Nobody's seen anything like it. We have hit hundreds of targets in Iran, including Revolutionary Guard facilities, Iranian air defense systems. Just now, it was announced that we knocked out 9 ships plus their naval building, all in a matter of literally minutes. Iran's formerly supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, is dead.
I spoke to you about the situation in the Gulf and explained that the United Kingdom was not involved in the strikes on Iran. That remains the case. The basis of our decision is the collective self-defence of long-standing friends and allies and protecting British lives. That is in accordance with international law, and we are publishing a summary of our legal advice. We are not joining these strikes, but we will continue with our defensive actions in the region.
Mr Farage, would a reform government have allowed US forces to use UK air bases for offensive operations in Iran?
Yes is the answer to your question. I would have said to the Americans, please do use our bases. We will be supportive of you on this.
There were a series of very loud blasts in the area of Dubai that I'm based in. That's in the marina area. It's a very touristy area, actually. Those blasts were the loudest we've heard yet, but equally we are reassured that they are most likely the sound of interception by the UAE's quite sophisticated THAAD interception kit. That is the Terminal High Altitude Area Defence System.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Three minutes after 9 o'clock. Good morning, Ian Collins in for Jeremy Kyle on Talk Breakfast for today and next week. And as we reach the end of a busy week, I've been saying this all along, who knew this time yesterday that such an explosive story would break, and Peter Mandelson would yet again be front and centre of the headlines. The Prince of Darkness is back on top of the news agenda. Turns out they knew all along that this man was not fit for purpose, but they persisted anyway. This is a mess, and you know what? Whatever way you slice it, the Prime Minister is up to his neck in it.
There was then, I should add, security vetting carried out independently by the security services, which is an intensive exercise that gave him clearance for the role, and you have to go through that before you take up the post.
Well, it didn't give him clearance for the role, as it turns out. He had words are very important, of course, in terms of what you say outside of Parliament and what you say inside. So it was a slightly different tone in February when he was challenged on this issue.
Can the Prime Minister tell us, did the official security vetting he received mention Mandelson's ongoing relationship with the paedophile Jeffrey Epstein?
So clear. Prime Minister?
Yes, it did.
So the vetting did throw up Epstein. One has to assume then, based on everything that is happening, that that wasn't the reason he failed. Because wouldn't somebody have said, oh, by the way, Prime Minister, he was messing around with a paedophile and staying in his house while he was in jail. But don't worry, everything's fine. I mean, that would surely have been the moment, unless it's something else. Is it China? What is the story here, and can Keir Starmer survive this one? I mean, it's inconceivable to most that he didn't know. It's either that or this is a man running a government where his most senior advisors decided not to tell him. Either way, it is an absolute mess. What does it mean for Keir Starmer going forward? 0344 499 1000. Drop us a voice note there as well. You can send a message to 87222. Let's speak with Dan Hodges, commentator with the Mail on Sunday, in just a moment. First, before all of that, let's get a voice note on Starmer. This comes from Darren.
Morning, Ian. Darren from Walsall. Real 2 Tier 3 gear, not being told about Mandelson failing the vetting procedure. We had a saying in the army, if the boss wanted you to go skinny, the boss wants you. You could say with or without coffee. Without coffee, you knew you was in for the carpeting. So when he found out Tuesday night, Wednesday morning, why was he not dragging them all in? Everybody in the civil service, in the Foreign Office, dragging them in and carpeting them. Why wasn't he? Why didn't he say, oh, tell Kemi I'm going to be an hour late for PMQs because I've got to sort these clowns out. I'm going to get to the bottom of this. Nah, he just goes, oh, OK, it doesn't matter. It'll go away. I'll tell you what, I'll jump on a plane to France and go and see me old mate Macron because everybody likes me when I'm a statesman. The bloke couldn't lie straight in bed. Great show, mate.
And a great voice note. Darren, thank you for that. Love it. You're absolutely right. So if we take Starmer as well, the minute he found out, he would have gone, what? What? You'd have got all of those Robbins, everybody would have been in number 10, and you'd have also invited Tyson Fury to smack him up a bit as well, wouldn't you? You'd have gone, come on, give him a belting. I mean, you'd have been apoplectic. And it's just sort of trickled out. Oh, I only knew on Tuesday. Probably means Monday. Dan Hodges, commentator at the Mail on Sunday, is with us. Dan, morning to you. Damning stuff, and here it is, the headline in your piece in the paper today. The deceit, deception and the duplicity have finally caught up with Sir Keir. He must resign.
Well, self-evidently, and you know, and your viewers know, you know, I've been on this programme and various other programmes quite a lot over the last sort of couple of months. And, you know, I faced some criticism from it, certainly from within Downing Street, for pointing out basically from the beginning of this scandal, the extent to which Keir Starmer had been lying about it, lying to Parliament, lying to the people, attempting to cover up the truth in relation to all this. And as we can see, this is, you know, so it has come to pass. And right, you know, on one level, even I was quite shocked yesterday when I saw the extent of the story that Mandelson had, you know, been specifically blocked as a result of the vetting process, which is unheard of, especially for somebody in a role as senior as this. But equally, there was something entirely predictable about this, because this is the pattern that we've seen with this scandal right from the very beginning, which is Starmer telling us things which subsequently turn out not to be true.
I mean, you say that Keir Starmer's been lying, but of course his defence is all rather simple, Dan. He didn't know.
Well, I mean, the point is, but this is the key thing about his defence. His defence isn't just that he didn't know, but that nobody in Downing Street knew. Now, on that is something that is very, very easy to disprove, and Starmer's lie in relation to this is very easy to prove, because back in September of last year, myself and my colleague Glenn Owen on the Mail on Sunday wrote a story in which we revealed, and we'd been told by multiple sources, broadly the outlines of this element of the scandal, which is that Mandelson had been red flagged during the vetting process. They were major red flags. Somebody within Downing Street approached the Foreign Office and those who were responsible for the vetting, pointed out that those red flags were very, very inconvenient politically, given Keir Starmer had made it very clear that he wanted Mandelson appointed and that he wanted that appointment expedited as quickly as possible. And as a result of that, the concerns about Mandelson in relation to the vetting were subsequently massaged away. But crucially, we took that story to Downing Street. We presented that story to Downing Street. Downing Street went away, came back to us and said the story and the allegations we were making were entirely false. Now, that was back in September. So this idea that Downing Street, that we've had from Downing Street, that the first Downing Street knew about this was on Tuesday, is just a complete and utter lie. And that's a documented fact. People can go, they can look at the story, they can look at what we wrote in September. I returned to the issue again in February. There's another report out this morning that another journalist, I think it's Richard Holmes at the I newspaper, wrote a story in March about how there were issues in relation to Peter Mandelson's vetting and his security clearance. Again, he approached Downing Street with that story. Again, I'm sorry to say it, Downing Street and the Prime Minister are simply lying again.
So this is flat-out denial that there was anything to see here over a number of months. Yourself and others trying to get to the hub of that, and then we're here where we are now, where we hear from the Prime Minister he found out on Tuesday. Now, firstly, you might think he would announce this in the House of Commons, which might have bought him a morsel of something, I don't know what, from some quarters. But he decided not to do that. In fact, he's not doing it today either. He's making no statement at all because he's legging it to France on other business. But if we take what you've said, Dan, merely as you've set it out, and the chronology and the history that you've given, which I know is always thorough and well researched, then it's a no-brainer then. This man cannot survive this. It's not a case of whether it's up to him, it's up to others around him now. This can't continue.
No, of course it can't. And we've got the ludicrous spectacle this morning, as we speak, Darren Jones, the hapless Cabinet Office Minister, is wandering around the broadcast studios trying to claim not only that Keir Starmer inadvertently misled the House of Commons and lied to the country, but also trying to claim that there was no there was no deception at all. Yeah. And also still after everything, attempting to claim that due process was followed in relation to this appointment. Now, that is just treating the British public not just as fools, but with complete contempt.
Let's, Dan, have just to interject for 1 second, let's have a listen then to Darren Jones making this very point. Here he is. In fact, we can slightly delay on that.
As she and the House would expect, full due process was followed during this appointment, as it is with all ambassadors. The ambassador has repeatedly expressed his deep regret. He is right to do so. He's now playing an important part in the US-UK relationship.
Apologies, that is Keir Starmer talking about due process being followed. We can hear, however, from the Secretary to the Prime Minister, arguably the most senior person next to the PM these days in Number 10, Darren Jones.
The process was followed. The process, as I explained, was that UK security vetting undertake investigations. They make a recommendation to the Employment Department, which is the Foreign Office in the case of an ambassador. And as I've said, the Foreign Office had this in my view, unacceptable, right, to ignore that advice that had been an established process for some time. And when the Foreign Office granted the approval, and therefore the appointment of Peter Mandelson as ambassador, due process as it was followed.
Right. I mean, that's confusing, Dan, on a number of levels. So, due process was followed after it all went wrong.
Remember what the minister just asked the country to believe. I mean, that's a grown adult who has a senior role in the British government. He just went on national television, told the British people, Peter Mandelson was vetted at the highest level of security for one of the most sensitive diplomatic, if not the most sensitive diplomatic post in the British diplomatic service. That vetting process, he failed. The security services, almost uniquely, and I've been speaking to others, I don't know anybody who has ever heard of somebody at such a senior level specifically being blocked as a result of the vetting process and having their DV vetting refused. That vetting was refused. The security services said this man should not be appointed. He represents too much of a national security risk. But he was appointed anyway.
Yes.
And the minister is literally saying to the country, oh, but don't worry, the due process was followed. The Prime Minister was absolutely right. I mean...
But it wasn't. I mean, that's not even a... It's not even hard to... I'm lost for words, really, Dan. It's off the scale, isn't it?
That's the point. It is now... We have now reached such a ridiculous situation where people like Darren Jones are just going out and parroting and regurgitating these lines on autopilot, not even actually thinking what they're saying, not actually thinking of the implications of what they're saying, and just going out there like speak your weight machines and saying this. I mean, you know, even if it was a case that Keir Starmer didn't know that Mandelson had been vetoed, that would still be an inexcusable omission from a Prime Minister putting forward somebody for such a sensitive post, especially as we know, and this is another crucial thing, there was another stage of the vetting process at the very beginning in which we know, because Keir Starmer has admitted it in the House, in which we know he was told. We know that he was told the initial vetting process, which is where the civil service pulled together just publicly sourced information about Mandelson. We know from that process, Keir Starmer raised that a number of concerns were raised about Peter Mandelson, which again were brushed under the carpet. So the issues, the alarm bells, if you like, were ringing internally within government from the moment Peter Mandelson was appointed. And yet Keir Starmer just drove the process through regardless. Remember, Mandelson was appointed before his developed vetting had been completed. We've seen the report, as I said, that was in the I newspaper, that he was attending meetings and being given access to sensitive departmental documents before the developed vetting process was completed. And remember, Keir Starmer told the House of Commons, told the country, oh no, everything was fine. He was cleared by the security services. And that wasn't true.
So in terms of, I mean, the classic question of where this goes next. Starmer's off to France, so we're not going to hear anything this week. We've got a whole weekend to go. That includes the Sunday papers, the Sunday rounds of all of the political shows, etc. Monday morning, fast forward to then, Dan, we're going to get a statement from the Prime Minister. Certainly it's going to come up at PMQs, one would assume.
Yeah, well, apparently we're going to get a statement from the Prime Minister on Monday on this, and we're now... You know, I think Keir Starmer is now basically trapped. But if you remember, and I wrote this, and I think I talked about this a few weeks ago. You remember a few weeks ago when Kemi Badenoch asked Keir Starmer a very, very basic question: Did you actually speak to Peter Mandelson before you appointed him? And he, on 6 occasions, refused to answer the question. Now, I said at the time that was bizarre, and I said that it was instructive. It was instructive of something that Keir Starmer clearly knows there is something within the Mandelson scandal that he feels is going to bring him down, which is why he was stonewalling in such a clumsy way. He's got nowhere to hide now. He's going to have to appear in the House of Commons. He's going to have to answer the detailed questions put to him by Kemi Badenoch and by others. Ollie Robbins is going to be pulled before the Foreign Affairs Select Committee. He's going to have to answer questions. He's not going to be able to do what he did last time, which was stonewall and say, I'm afraid I can't talk about the vetting process. It's much too secret for ordinary mortals to have an understanding of or have the information imparted about. He's not going to be able to do that. And this is the question. What Downing Street is asking us to believe is that Ollie Robbins, a senior career civil servant, unilaterally took a decision to overrule the advice of the security services and appoint Mandelson. Now that is simply incredible on its own. But what they're then also asking us to believe is that having done so, he then failed to tell Downing Street about that. Now, unless Ollie Robbins is basically just going to completely burn himself publicly, just burn his own reputation and basically say and effectively take the fall.
Yes, I know what you're going to say, and I was wondering this too.
Take the fall for Downing Street. Then it's it's game up for Starmer.
Well, because that would be the thing, wouldn't it? I mean, if I was Ollie Robbins, I'd be furious if I'd done exactly what I was meant to do.
And allies of Ollie Robbins are furious.
Absolutely, I would simply say to anybody that would care to listen. Unless, of course, NDAs and all the usual.
There are always ways. We've seen, there are ways to manage this. But this is the other point, which people forget. And I keep saying this: we are still only in the foothills of the Peter Mandelson scandal.
Yeah.
Right. We haven't seen any of the documents yet. We haven't seen any of the WhatsApp messages. We haven't seen any of the emails. We haven't seen the police investigation. It'll be months before the documents that the police are insisting are not published are published. We've got all that still to come.
Yeah. This is the hors d'oeuvre in that respect.
Exactly. This is just the beginning of this. Yeah. And the idea, that we're seeing from people like Darren Jones and some members of the cabinet and some of Keir Starmer's cheerleaders, that, this is just something that Keir Starmer can just shrug off. And then, go back to talking about breakfast clubs and, some sort of Love Actually moment, in relation to Trump. It's just for the birds.
It is for the birds. It's interesting, just to go back to Ollie Robbins, I mean, it's completely possible that, as you say, he'll burn himself on this and say, no, I should have told the... we sort of rather had that a little bit with the McSweeney resignation, didn't we? There was, almost no, I did what I was meant to do. I told the peer. He just completely took the fall for the whole thing. The other aspect, Dan, that is quite interesting, and I know this really focuses on the Prime Minister, but David Lammy seems to have been overlooked quite a bit in this story, remembering he was the Foreign Secretary at the time. So presumably in this this I know nothing kind of farce, Mr. Lammy would be claiming the same line as well.
Well, he was claiming. I mean, David Lammy was claiming via allies yesterday. He didn't know about Mandelson being rejected for vetting until we all did yesterday. He was claiming he did. So according to David Lammy, he was kept in the dark by Downing Street himself.
And his office is literally in the same building as Ollie Robbins. He's down the corridor.
He's supposedly the deputy
prime minister.
He's the deputy prime minister who was the foreign secretary at the time. Yeah, but we're led to believe nobody in Downing Street bothered to say, actually, you know what? Somebody should tell David about this.
Yes.
The whole thing is just it's a farce, and I'm laughing, but what are we talking about here at the end of the day? I mean, firstly, we've got the whole Epstein angle of it, which is the appalling abuse and Mandelson's proximity to him. We've got the fact that, as I said, Mandelson was being pushed forward for one of the most sensitive diplomatic roles in the British diplomatic service at a time of unique global jeopardy. And he was forced through, despite the fact the security services vetoed him. And here's the other aspect, which we haven't even started to touch on yet. Why was it that Mandelson was vetoed? Now, we know from evidence that Ollie Robbins and the former Cabinet Secretary Chris Wormold gave to the Foreign Affairs Select Committee. They said to that committee categorically that the first that they knew, or anyone else knew, or the first that it was raised in any of the vetting about the true nature of Mandelson's relationship with Epstein was when the messages leaked, obviously well after the whole vetting process. Yeah. Assuming they're not lying, and I think we have to accept that, assuming they're not lying, what that demonstrates is it wasn't Mandelson's relationship with Epstein that led to him being red flagged.
Yes. So it's something else.
What was it of such significance that the security services said, we know how important this guy is to you, Prime Minister, but you can't have him?
There is some speculation that the word China will appear somewhere in the...
I think the word... my understanding is the word Russia will appear.
Oh, interesting. That's arguably even worse. Finally, very briefly, if we can, Dan, is this whole saga worse than Boris Johnson eating cake?
Oh, yeah. I mean, but you know, I would never... Let's not belittle what Boris did. It wasn't just about eating cake. It was about the fact that he asked the country to make huge sacrifices in relation to COVID and then failed to make those same sacrifices himself and similarly lied about it. I mean, let's not belittle what happened. But yes, to answer your question, it is worse because this goes to the heart of British national security. It goes to the heart of our relationship with the United States. It goes to the heart of, as I said, I think there are going to be all sorts of issues that arise about Mandelson's relationships, not just with Epstein, but with other people. It goes obviously to the integrity of the Prime Minister. And crucially, this is why I think it's worse and most people perceive it's worse.
Yeah. Dan.
We had Keir Starmer slating Boris over this and saying he was much better. Yeah. And of course, now we know he wasn't.
Dan, thank you. Very thorough stuff. Really good to properly chew the fat on this. Dan Hodges, commentator with the Mail on Sunday, with the ins and outs, the chronology, the irredeemable position that Keir Starmer says, Dan, has found himself in. There it is, his words in the Mail today. The deceit, deception and the duplicity have finally caught up with Sir Keir. He must resign, says Dan Hodges. I should caveat that with and others, for goodness sake. Let's get a voice note on Starmer. This comes from Fran. Morning, Fran.
Hi, Ian. It's Fran from Northern Ireland here. Love the show. I believe they're putting all of this out to just let Starmer keep limping on until May. So I believe he did know. Of course he knew. It's just ridiculous to say that he didn't know. And the stories they're coming out with now, it's like they're peeing on us and telling us it's rain. It's just ridiculous. So, but I think it's literally all being concocted. How can we keep this man in power until May? And then we can get rid of him. Because if we get rid of him now and then May goes terribly, they're going to call for whoever's replaced to go as well. So I think they're concocting the most outrageous stories, anything to keep this man in power. And then come May, he'll be gone. Love the show, Ian. Bye.
Some breaking news this morning revealed that under the Terrorist Act, 242 people were arrested in the year to June of this year.
That's something you can indulge in as to all the people who aren't going to prison because, well, there's no prison spaces.
So this is a Talk exclusive we've been looking at.
I said, you take these cuffs off me and speak to me like a human being rather than a common criminal.
You're just left wondering, does these people who lead us actually hate Britain? Yeah. Do they not love our country and everything that we've stood for?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Morning, welcome back. 9:30 on the nose. Ian Collins in for Jeremy for the next week. Lots to wade through. What an incredible story. There's really we dipped our toe into other territories, but there's mainly one story in town, and that is the revelations that Peter Mandelson failed the security vetting procedure prior to be appointed ambassador to the United States. Let's get a Labour voice on this. Lord Fawkes, Labour peer, former minister under Tony Blair. Lord Fawkes, morning to you. I know you've previously been very defensive of Keir Starmer. I'm assuming time is up on that defence. When does he walk the plank? Is it this side of the May elections or just afterwards?
Good morning, Ian.
Morning.
To come on your very balanced programme. You've had Dan Hodges, one of the usual suspects, on. You've given him a free run for half an hour. Yeah. Of course, he has to do his owner's bidding, the Mail on Sunday, owned by tax exiles.
Well, he might just believe his own work because he's very diligent.
If his owners paid their tax, some of the rest of us might have decent services.
Well, you don't want to do half an hour on Dan Hodges' tax affairs, do you?
But no, not him, but the owners.
Okay, all right, fair enough. All right,
you said this is the only story in town. It's the only story that you've got and that the right-wing media have. But you know, there's
This was broken by The Guardian, Lord Fawkes. The Guardian broke this story.
You're nearly as bad as Jeremy Kyle. You didn't interrupt Dan Hodges in the way you're interrupting me.
Well, no, but Dan Hodges didn't say something a bit bizarre, and you did. So I'm picking you up just purely on the point of bias, which is the central to what you've started off with. This is a Guardian story. It's a leftist publication that has revealed this story today.
Are you going to allow me to speak now?
Go for it.
Thank you. You said it's the only story in town. There's a war in the Middle East which could escalate into something it's already affecting us at home, and it could escalate into something worse. The Pope and the President of the United States.
Yeah, we covered that as well. We covered those stories.
They're having an unbelievable tiff between each other. There are Russian submarines that are keeping an eye on our vital services. These are the major stories.
I agree. Have you been taught this level of deflection in media training or something, Lord Fawkes?
You're going to let me speak again, are you?
Well, yes, I was rather hoping you'd stick with the story of Keir Starmer.
I haven't. No. Of course you want to do that. You've got this Starmer.
That's why we're talking to you. I mean, it's a big story. Are you telling me this is not a significant story? Come on, you've been round the block long enough. You know Parliament, you know the procedure.
Ian,
You're a highly intelligent man.
Thank you very much. You said it's the only story in town.
Well, it's a turn of phrase. You know what that means. It's the biggest story.
What I'm trying to tell you is that you're making it the major story.
And it is a major story. It is a major story.
Are you listening to me?
Yes.
I'm saying there are more important issues that you should be concentrating on.
We have concentrated on many of those, but today, we talked about Donald Trump and the Pope just an hour ago. The war in Iran, never ending. Submarines in our shores is ongoing. All of that stuff is covered. Today, a big story, a significant story, is the future of our own Prime Minister. Who's been lying? Who appointed a wrong 'un into that position? Who knew what? The Foreign Office? Are they withholding evidence? Are they embarrassing the Prime Minister? What is going on? I mean, you're telling me this is not a big story?
No, it's of course it's a story, but
great. Well, let's respond to that then.
You've already heard from Darren Jones.
Yes.
What we didn't know, and I don't know if you knew, that the Foreign Office had the power to overrule security vetting. And I didn't know that, and I was a minister for a long time. Darren Jones didn't know it. Darren Jones has now returned to London and said, that is going to stop. That will not happen again.
Well, that might be the case. It's what the Prime Minister knew, isn't it, that's at the centre of all of this?
Yes, and he clearly didn't know. And Ollie Robbins...
Clear, the chronology says otherwise. He clearly didn't know. There were journalists asking this question months ago.
You didn't keep interrupting the Dan Hodges, because he was saying what you wanted him to say.
I didn't want him to say anything. I didn't care what he said. He was saying what he said because he's followed and investigated the story, so he talked us through. So I'm asking you to counter it, but we need to counter it factually, of course, not with hyperbole and invention.
You knew what he was going to say, and you allowed him to go on. Dan Hodges has been attacking the Prime Minister for 2 years now. It's not as if it's anything new. But Sir Ollie Robbins has resigned because he did not tell either the Foreign Secretary or the Prime Minister that the FCDO had overruled the security vetting. And he's taken the rap for that. And that's absolutely clear now. And the Prime Minister, when he made a statement to the House of Commons, did not know that the FCDO had overruled the security.
Isn't that extraordinary, Lord Fawkes?
Yes, it is.
It is beyond belief that they didn't trust Keir Starmer significantly. Ollie Robbins didn't trust our own Prime Minister, his boss.
No, it's not a question of he didn't trust. He just didn't tell him. And he's now retired.
Why would you not tell a Prime Minister?
The Prime Minister is going to make a statement on Monday.
Yes.
He will answer any questions. Ollie Robbins can appear before the Select Committee, the Foreign Affairs Select Committee. They can ask him any questions. That's Parliament at work, doing its proper job.
Yes, and journalism at work doing its proper job is to call into question all of these, the chronology, the bits that don't appear to add up, the contradictions, the differing accounts from fairly senior people, and the bits that simply don't make sense.
What are the differing accounts?
Well, the differing account, Darren Jones telling us this morning, or telling anyone who cares to listen, that the Prime Minister is furious because he didn't know anything about this. Now, given
that's not a differing account.
Well, it is a different account when journalists were raising the question to him prior to this Guardian revelation that is it true that there were security considerations around Lord Mandelson? Now, if you're asking that question, the Prime Minister would naturally get somebody, one of his underlings, to go and check that out, wouldn't he? Hang on, there's a lot around. I mean, the idea that Mandelson was even in the frame to begin with is a bit bonkers and bizarre and disturbing. You'd agree with that, I'm sure. And yet, you know, despite all the red flags, it went ahead.
At the time he was appointed, the leader of Reform, Nigel Farage, said it was an inspired appointment.
Well,
Why didn't he ask about the security vetting?
Well, he's not the Prime Minister. One assumes that the Prime Minister and the departments have done due diligence on this, don't they?
Nigel Farage might have asked due diligence about Nathan Gill, who actually is a Russian spy and is in jail now. Now, have you held...
I don't know if he was a spy, but yes, I take your point.
Have you had Nigel Farage on your programme asking him about Nathan Gill?
At the time that this happened, Nigel Farage appeared across the media being asked about Nathan Gill.
Did you have him on your programme?
He didn't come on my programme, but he came on this morning.
Did you ask him? Have you heard him being challenged about Nathan Gill?
Yes, many times Reform have been challenged. I heard somebody just a couple of days ago challenging a Reform member on Nathan Gill. Let's stick with Peter Mandelson. You've known Mandelson for years, I would assume, Lord Fawkes. You know he's a wrong-un. You would have known that. Everybody around, he was called the Prince of Darkness, for goodness sake. I mean, how he even got on the shortlist is a bit of a mystery, but somehow he did. And yet the security services said there's other things that are not even Epstein connected. So this must have been so severely serious, and they allowed the Prime Minister to appoint him.
How do you know what the security services said? I don't know. How do you know?
I don't know specifically what it was, but you'd have to assume it was something pretty grave to fail a vetting process.
Well, I would like to know. I mean, I
would like to know. I mean, there's lots of speculation. It could be about Russia, it could be about China, it could be something like that.
I used to be on the Intelligence and Security Committee, and I know how MI6 and MI5 and the ECHQ work.
So they found something that was compromising on Mandelson.
I don't know. You were hinting earlier on it might be about Russia. As I say, we know that there is a Russian spy in jail now, Nathan Gill, a reform.
So you think Peter Mandelson didn't get given the go-ahead because of Nathan Gill?
No.
I mean, let's be honest. I mean, it's quite fun, this, Lord Fawkes, but Nathan Gill's got nothing to do with this story, has he? You're obfuscating to protect your brand of Labour. You can't continue to protect Keir Starmer, Lord Fawkes.
I'm just making a comparison. Keir Starmer has done a very good job in terms of Ukraine.
Where has he done a good job? Show me the evidence. There is none.
In terms of Ukraine, in terms of the Middle East, I've seen.
What's he done in the Middle East?
Ian, you keep interrupting.
It's a question.
You really are. You're worse than Jeremy Kyle. I never thought I'd see someone on who was worse than Jeremy Kyle for interrupting. What I'm saying is that even the Liberal Democrat leader the other day said that he'd done a very good job in international affairs. All right, he's challenging him on this issue, but a lot of people have said he'd done a very good job on the Middle East, on Ukraine, on a whole range of other things.
All right.
And he kept us out of supporting the United States and Israel in that attack on Iran.
So in terms of, just to come back to where we started, Lord Fawkes, let's finish on as friends here. The future of Keir Starmer, whether you like it or not, is definitely under question from his own party. You've got Wes Streeting on manoeuvres. Angela Rayner would love the gig. Big Ed Miliband is desperate for it. How long can he hang on for? When will Starmer be gone? Your thoughts?
He'll be leading us into the next election.
You believe that?
I do.
Seriously, come on, you don't believe that. You worked with Tony Blair. The adults were in the room when Blair was in power, even if people didn't vote for him. You believe Keir Starmer will be there till 2029?
Till the next election. Yes, he'll lead us into the next election, and we'll win the next election.
So he'll lead us into it, and he'll win it. I tell you what, you've taken the word loyalty to levels I didn't even know actually existed, but it's lovely to speak with you. Lord Fawkes, thank you. Labour peer, former minister under Tony Blair, currently married to Keir Starmer, currently endorsing Keir Starmer. There it was. Well, you heard it there yourself. 0344 499 1000. We're going to pause momentarily back. Simon Calder's going to join us in a few moments as well. Loads to come from you. Responses to that interview too. This is Talk.
just trying to take credit, Keir Starmer, isn't he?
This man is not a leader. He is not the statesman that our country needs. He is failing us at every single level.
Donald Trump understands that Keir Starmer is fundamentally not a patriot.
Yeah.
He's not on the side of the West. He's been appeasing the Iranians in order to shore up his vote in this country.
In front of me is Waitrose, and I'm about to head in there. I literally openly put the stuff in my bag. I nervously walked to the front door, and away we go.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is indeed Talk. 0344 499 1000. This from Tom in Bletchley, who says, good day, Ian Collins. Lord Fawkes is the reason why some members of the Lords should be required to be retired early. Fair point. Ian Brown, not that one, says, congrats, you are worse than Jeremy Kyle. And this one from Claire, unbelievable. The Lord guy is a joke. Even Starmer's own wife wouldn't defend him that much. It was extraordinary. I did wonder, I've just messaged a friend on exactly that point. I did wonder whether he was kind of just playing a role. Did he think, oh, I'm coming on to talk to Collins, and Collins is a mate of Kyle's, and I'll just say rubbish. I'll just say stupid things, and they can have some fun with it. It was bonkers territory, but I do, joking aside, I think Labour people in that position kind of do believe it, because they sort of have to believe it, because the alternative to them is so unpalatable. Keir Starmer's done a great job. He will be there till 2029, and he will win the next election. I mean, that's a trio of utter flipping nonsense, right? 0344 499 1000. How much fuel have we got left to keep running things like jets, for example? We're hearing, well, the Chancellor is suggesting that, you know, we could run out of stuff, and others are saying, no, everything is tickety-boo. What's the reality? Only one person to ask. Simon Calder is travel correspondent at The Independent. Morning to you, Simon. I think you've just got off a plane, so glad it had fuel to keep you nice and safe on your journey to Guernsey. Morning.
Good morning, and I would like to say that I regard both you and the great Jeremy Kyle as of equal status.
That's great to hear. That's absolutely fine.
Okay.
You should be in the House of Lords.
Thank you. I'll see you there.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So, yeah, my plane this morning, I wasn't supposed to be on the plane I was on. The one I was supposed to be on was cancelled. And they did that because of the high price of aviation fuel.
Seriously?
They said, we're going to combine two flights into a single one, because that way we won't use up so much fuel. Now, I don't actually mind that too much. It wasn't too much of an inconvenience. But that's what we're going to be seeing a lot of. We are not going to see massive shortages of aviation fuel, certainly for the next month. And we are not going to see anything which is going to jeopardize the average holiday. Can I show you my working? Right.
Yes, please do.
We know that we're all right till middle of May. Everybody says that. There's, you know, complete visibility. EasyJet and Ryanair say, yep, we've got more than enough to go around and it'll all be fine. Oh, I don't know what happens here. I wonder if I have to go through any
passport
any
control?
checks. Yeah, you never know.
Yeah.
Oh, here we are. Okay, but
you're a Brit. You're going to have
customs,
your face scanned, your fingerprints. Everything.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. Yeah, right. Okay. So, thank you for your help. I'm going to hang around here, because otherwise things could get tricky. Okay, yeah. So
Midnight Express.
So here's the situation. There is, if we lose all the fuel that is due to be coming to us from the Middle East, that represents 23% of all the fuel needs, okay, for the UK. And that's assuming that it just doesn't get replaced. Right. Now, if the airlines were told you've got to take out 23% of your flights, you might think, well, that's terrible. There's a 1 in 4 chance that my flight's going to go.
Yes.
Well, it wouldn't be like that, you see. They would do largely things as exactly my airline has done for financial reasons here today. They would just combine a couple of flights. I mean, EasyJet's got 6 flights a day, Gatwick to Nice. You could take out 1 or 2 of those, and probably everybody would fit on. I'll tell you what, Ian, the people who I think this could affect the worst would be all those people. They may be listening and watching now thinking, okay, a bit uncertain about booking a holiday. You might find that actually you get to the point where you think, yeah, I'll book a holiday, and then there just won't be any seats because they've been combining flights. So I am not worried about it from the point of view of loads and loads of people missing their holidays. It's just that it could be no seats, or the prices are through the roof.
Simon, when you talk about combining flights, I mean, when they combine trains, if your train is cancelled, the next one comes, it's got twice as many people on it. There is an extraordinary amount of people standing up. There's always some sort of slightly sweaty person who miraculously produces a genuine Spanish fan in the summer and waves it in their face. I never know how that happens. It's carnage on there.
And a tuna sandwich.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes, indeed. So what's the deal? You don't have to. You're not going to be. There's not going to stand up and have to kind of crouch on laps.
That is a really, really good question. No, I mean, so in the case of this particular flight, which was absolutely completely full, they just decided a couple of weeks ago, we'll combine the two, and we know we can sell those out.
Right. Okay.
Now, if you look at the booking trends, let's take third Saturday in July, which is going to be the point at which probably peak day for departures for the UK. Airlines are probably roughly 85% sold for that. And so that's going to be a bit of a squeeze, but that's as bad as it gets. They would simply stop selling new tickets because every airline loves selling tickets right at the last moment, because very often they will command the most money from it. So it would be done. The airlines would hate it. You and I would grumble a bit because our flight has been moved a bit, possibly, but most people will get where they need to be. And the chap, the head of the International Energy Agency, he yesterday was quoted as saying, we're going to run out of fuel in Europe by within 6 weeks. Well, we're not. In the UK, certainly, where we import a lot of our aviation fuel, the worst that will happen is that we'll have 23% less. But that's assuming, Ian, that there aren't loads of people stepping in from loads of other places because they're seeing the prices they can sell their aviation fuel for. They want to sell it for the most they possibly can, and they realise that the longer this goes on, the more likely, we hope, there will be some reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. So it's going to be possibly challenging. I need to absolutely stress, spoken to EasyJet, and I said, you guys must surely be wargaming this in the sense of, well, what would we do if this happened on this date and we had to reduce our flights? And they said, nope, we're absolutely not. So they're obviously very confident.
So there is some confidence out there, and hearing that from you, Simon, is fabulous. Listen, have a safe check-in over there at Guernsey. I hope they let you through and your face doesn't let you down in the new facial recognition department, although I know it doesn't quite affect where you are at the moment. Thank you, Simon Calder, travel correspondent at The Independent, with us this morning doing a walk-in talking bit with his phone. To the amusement of fellow holiday makers. Tony is in West Sussex. Tony, what have you got for us? You get a final word, I think, on this morning's events. What are your thoughts? Morning to you.
I've been listening to you since 6 o'clock. It's a great show. Love it.
Good, thank you.
I just think the last time a very good Prime Minister, although Starmer is anything but a very good Prime Minister, went abroad to France, she came back and lost her job. Because while she was away, the gremlins did play and the goblins
Well, that's when she was in Paris, wasn't it?
Correct.
And they'd had the vote and she didn't quite get enough votes. And
he's gone off to see Macron, and I think when he comes back, the goblins in around his party.
Yeah, that would be extraordinary.
We've had enough.
I mean, the smart money says, though, Tony, I mean, I hear what you're saying, and wouldn't it be an amazing replication of history if it happened just like that? But the smart money says that after the May the 7th elections is likely to be when it really ramps up, the pressure really ramps up on Starmer.
Well, this doesn't help him in the elections because people can see what's going on and they just think more and more and more lies. So, I mean, why would you vote for him? I'm not.
Yeah, well, I absolutely. The perception of the Prime Minister is at such a low at the moment. They're clearly, predicted. I know most governments on sort of mid-term local elections and the like, get a bit of a pasting. That's not entirely new, but it could be horrific. It could be horrific for Keir Starmer looking at the polling.
He's had a pasting since day one, hasn't he?
He really has. They never had, that famous honeymoon period that people are meant to have. They never had that, did they? Because they came out the traps early doors with winter fuel allowance. They upset the farmers, goodness knows who else. And it was just a catalogue of doom from day one for Labour.
You're right. Absolutely right.
Well, I mean, imagine waiting. Anyway. Imagine waiting, Tony, for 14 years for the job. Yeah. And then when you get it, you blow it in about half an hour.
This is why what people say to me, I'm not voting reform. I've never been in government. And I'm thinking, well, bloody hell, Labour have, Conservative have. What have we got to lose?
Well, we will see. Listen, Tony, great call. Thank you for your nice comments as well. Have a fabulous weekend. He's Tony in West Sussex. Let's get a voice note on Lord Fawkes. This comes from Steve.
Hi, Ian. Steve from Manchester. Great show, mate. Listening to that interview with Lord Faulkner, worse than Jeremy Kyle. I talk about deflection. Every single thing that man said was a deflection on the question of, is Keir Starmer finished? He just would not say anything about that at all. It was like, it's this, it's that, it's Nigel's fault, it's a communist, and all this. The man was just a muppet. I'm surprised he didn't have a script in front of him, was just reading out of a script. Ridiculous. Anyway, great show, mate. Catch you later. Bye.
Good man, Steve. Thank you. Just to clarify, it was Lord Fawkes, not Lord Faulkner, who's a different lord altogether. And Charlie Faulkner tends to, be slightly more, I suppose sane would be the word when interviewed. This one comes in. Ian, with the up-and-coming shortages of aviation fuel, will the people who stockpiled loo roll during COVID debacle start panic flying? Yes, that's a great point, actually. I'm going on holiday. Why? Well, I might not be able to in 6 weeks. Did you plan a holiday? No. Ian in Essex, deflection at the highest level. Well played, you. If that was his reply, can't wait for Keir's reply. Yeah, good point. Alex Phillips is here. No deflection coming up at 10 o'clock.
We were loving your interview in there. We were listening to it. And when he said, you're worse than Jeremy Kyle. Yes. Rapturous laughter outside. It was just, I like breakfast, Ian.
It's good fun.
Like a different person.
Lord Fawkes, I'm not quite sure. I was just messaging a friend about this, and look, is he real, Lord Fawkes? Is he just sort of a central casting satirical character called the angry lefty that gets wheeled out for interviews, and then in a couple of weeks' time there's going to be a Dan Hodges will reveal in the Mail on Sunday that Lord Fawkes doesn't actually exist. It's an actor that used to be in Emmerdale.
Oh, it's well, he's got himself into a pickle.
He was on the Intelligence Committee, he said.
Oh, was he?
Yeah, apparently. So under the Blair.
Well, the Intelligence Committee is now where a lot of the power lies, isn't it?
Well,
Intelligence
clearly.
and Security Committee.
Well, they were the very people that flagged up that Peter Mandelson might not be fit for purpose.
I love this idea that it's like, well, no one told me. I didn't know he didn't pass the vetting. That never got put in my in tray. And I'm like, the fact that you just appointed him in the first place is crackers, because, forget even the Epstein stuff. And we knew he was connected to Epstein and everything rumbling on there.